rose of the ashes, the spirits light up the night.
Now, we're live from the Untold Radio Network. It's Untold Radio AM with Monster Quest producer, host Doug Hajicek, and co-host Jeff Perrella Jr. Untold Radio AM is going live right now.
Hello. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, man.
We're a little late because we had a few little glitches. Just glitches.
Technical gremlins. Gremlins always pop up at the worst time.
Yeah, exactly. And they do. But hello, everyone. Yeah, welcome to Untold Radio. So tonight we have a very cool show.
Yeah.
We have a live show featuring guest and witness Brian Goddard. Is that how you say his name?
Goddard,
Jeff,
Goddard, I think.
Goddard?
I think it's Goddard. We'll find out for sure.
And a historic live report via satellite tonight from the wilds of Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be really cool with Adam Colt in a very Bigfoot active area.
Live from the middle of nowhere via Starlink.
It literally will be. Yeah, it will be with Starlink. Also, we have weird Amazon finds, products that will entertain you, I hope, and some odd science news and more and blah, blah, blah. And the usual stuff, right?
Shenanigans. The usual shenanigans.
Scientific shenanigans.
But
welcome, everybody. Yes. I see a lot of great familiar faces.
Yeah.
It's nice to see everybody.
Absolutely.
And just so people know, I can see who's here, right? I get to see everybody.
Yeah.
And I get to read your comments. Some people don't know that, I suppose.
Yeah. Gosh, I love our chat group. Just a great group.
It's a great group.
I love it.
What else?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. God bless everybody.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else we got. I'm just looking here. I'm trying to read. We had some tech issues.
Oof.
We just pulled off at the last second here. But what am I looking at here? Hang on a second. What in the world? Do you ever get confused, Jeff?
All the time.
Like today?
Yeah. I was doing great until about an hour and a half ago. Everything's, I start show prep pretty early because I like to be prepared and have everything good to go. And
I do too. I'm a pro. I know that if you don't prep, you're going to have failure, right?
Oh, for sure. So I did my final check about an hour ago, and all of a sudden,
everything went to hell.
Everything went to hell. And
in comes Alex.
Yeah, Alex saved the day.
Let's see. I'm just trying to get a handle on what in the hell I wanted to talk about, and for some reason, I cannot find a beginning or an end to my dumb notes. And yes, I have very dumb notes. They're very third grade level notes. Maybe you get my notes.
Yeah,
third grade.
Work.
What grade would you rate them at?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I don't grade it like that. It's show notes. All that matters is that it's clear and organized, which it is. And
that's good. Good. That's good.
That's the important part.
Anyhow, so we want to remind you that
New York Bigfoot Conference.
Yeah, about the New York. We're going to talk about that. But I'm trying to read my notes here, and I'm like, what in the hell am I talking about? Literally, I swear to God, I had like a stroke about an hour ago. Do you ever have that feeling where you're just like, all of a sudden, everything's new to you? Like a reset, like you got zapped by a laser or, somebody did a reset in your brain. I'm looking at my notes and I'm going, why don't my own notes, they don't make sense. And I just wrote them.
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote my own notes.
Yeah, I got them. I mean, everything looked.
Well, I know, but I don't understand them. And I'm like, why am I not understanding my own notes? Blah, 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 blah. What in the world am I even talking? I don't even get it. Anyhow, let's mention the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot conference coming up in New York, put on by Loretta Collins. And why am I drawing a blank again? I'm just doing this terrible blank. You know who's putting the conference are in New York, don't you, Jeff?
Yeah. I can't remember.
I'm literally
Mark DeWorth.
Yeah, Mark DeWorth. Why am I drawing a blank? Anyhow, they're putting on this great conference.
Yeah.
And I think tickets just went on sale, right? The NewYorkBigfootConference.com. So don't waste time getting your tickets. I do know they will sell out quick. You know, all conferences are very limited in how many tickets they can sell, right? They don't have like overflow. You know, these aren't outdoor events. So you've got to get your tickets now.
Vendor tables are still available. Sponsorships are available.
Yeah, it just opened up. Tickets are $90. Vendor tables are about $100, or they're $100. Sponsorships are still available. So let's go ahead and play this video, which is really for Facebook, but we'll go ahead and play it. Go ahead.
Yep, here we go.
Coming this fall to New York, the first annual New York Bigfoot Conference. On October 3rd and 4th, 2025, at the Holiday Inn Conference Center in Johnstown, Gloversville, with an amazing speaker lineup, including Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Cliff Barrickman, Renee Holland, Adam Davies, and Dr. Esteban Sarmiento, with Mark DeWorth as Master of Ceremonies. The event is hosted by Loretta Collins and Mark DeWorth. Tickets are on sale right now for the New York Bigfoot Conference. Don't miss it. Visit NewYorkBigfootConference.com for more information.
And you couldn't ask for two nicer people that are putting this conference on. They're both so amazing. And of course, Mark has got so much experience doing this, you know, with the Ohio Bigfoot Conference that he puts on that runs like a Swiss watch.
Yep.
He does a great job.
Unlike my show prep an hour ago.
Well, yeah, me too. I swear to God, I'm just like, you know, everything went haywire.
Yeah.
And I think it just throws you off your game.
It does. I'm a little bit rattled still. I'm okay, but it just kind of, you know, I'm a little bit rattled still.
Well, there's pressure. There's pressure on all of this. All right.
Broadcast.
Yeah. So we've got this packed show. So let's get it going. We've got a little bit of news. I think it's interesting. Let's go ahead and run with that.
Okay.
Untold radio news that can be a bit weird is right now.
First off, throw up photo one, Jeff. Experts removed nearly 100 reptile eggs after a record-setting discovery in a residential backyard. Nice. How would you like to find 100 reptile eggs? They could be what? Alligators, lizards. There's something. There's some kind of reptile, right? They're not a bird. So it's apparently this is iguana problems in Florida. It says they're dealing with humane iguana control to remove iguana eggs. And apparently somebody found in their backyard. Local news station Fox 35 reported that what they found was jaw-dropping. There were 98 iguana eggs in her backyard. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So which for context is a lot. It could set a new record for an area. Technician Michael Ronquillo said 3 female iguanas have nested in burrows that were all interconnected, and each had laid their own clutch of iguanas, which are invasive, obviously, to Florida, but they have a hatch rate at 93%. So there you go.
Iguanas.
I was thinking we should release them into your backyard, Jeff. Iguanas.
I don't think they'd last too long in Minnesota.
Well, they do good in the summer.
Sure.
They get actually, when they get cold, they just kind of drop out of the trees.
You could have iguana popsicles in the winter.
Yeah, but I don't think it kills them. I think they just get cold and stiff, and they just boink.
I know frogs do that. Frogs can freeze. And
Dr. Lynn Rogers, I think, did experiments when he was in college where he was freezing frogs solid and reanimating them.
And
Completely solid, like knock on wood. All right, next. Peppy the gator, weighing almost 400 pounds, has been arrested. Can you arrest alligators, Jeff?
Apparently.
Look at the size of this dude. He's probably not even necessarily a huge one, but boy, they do get big when you get up close.
10 footer. It's an adult, but it's not massive.
Yeah, right. That's not, they get up to like 20 some feet.
Yeah.
As I remember. So they'd be like, picture an animal twice this big. It says this guy measuring 10 feet in length was caught loitering off the pavement in Jacksonville, Florida, about 120 miles south of Raleigh. It said witnesses were saying he was just chilling and snapping and clearly ignoring the no loitering and lounging on roadway signs.
Yeah.
So there you
doing
go.
His own thing.
Yeah, it's a prehistoric perp, they call him.
Yeah.
He's been cited on suspicion of being a dinosaur.
Without proper papers.
What a silly story.
Yeah.
All right. Toilet paper could be irrelevant
that's important.
soon. Yeah. It better not become irrelevant soon.
I don't think so.
It says, and I'm going, I wrote in my notes, yeah, I bet. And I do just do that bet. It says it's difficult to imagine an existence without toilet paper, but it is possible. Obviously, they didn't have it like, what did they use back 300 years ago, Jeff? You're a historian. Fingers? That's it?
One hand, left hand only. That's why.
That's why you shake with the right hand?
That's.
Are you telling me they didn't use anything? Come on.
Well, yeah, like pieces. I know, like in Rome, they used like sponge, like natural sponge. You know, like that kind of stuff.
Sorry if somebody's eating. It says it's difficult to imagine an existence without toilet paper, but it is possible that the future is going to be toilet paper free, right? Going toilet paperless could be a real option. So why would humans move away from toilet paper, according to Think Stewartville? Environmental concerns, health implications, and cultural preferences are driving this change towards more sustainable alternatives. And what would that be, Jeff? Your bare hand? That's sustainable.
But then you got to wash it and use that. There's no free lunch.
It says, according to Cottonelle, the average person uses the toilet 5 times a day, but anything from 4 to 10 times is considered normal. Also, the average person uses 7 sheets of toilet paper per, I want to say it, wipe.
Yeah.
7 sheets per wipe. 6.4 sheets per toileting occasion for women, and 8.1 sheets per occasion. Is that what you call it? An occasion?
I'm going to start using that.
Having an occasion.
An occasion. I love that.
So it says Cottonelle states also the average American adult uses around 1 roll of toilet paper every week and 50 rolls a year.
Sure, why not?
There you go. 50 rolls is all you need per year. That's it. Start being cheap with the toilet paper, Jeff.
Yeah. I don't like.
So why would we replace toilet paper? There are a few options, and some of them have been around a long time. According to Think Stewartville bidets, it's bidet. Are the most established and common toilet paper alternative. Yeah, but a bidet uses a bunch of water, right?
Yeah, we use water, and you still got to dry.
Yeah,
up.
you still got wet. You're all wet. What the hell?
Yeah.
Probably going to use more of something. Okay. According to Think Stewartville, bidets are the most established and common toilet paper alternative, and they date back centuries. These standalone fixtures use precisely directed streams of water for cleaning, eliminating the need for paper products. So anyhow, I just think not. Just think not.
I'm going to stick with toilet paper.
Why did I pick
Sorry.
this crappy article?
You did it, not me.
That's a crappy article.
Crappy, very crappy.
No pun. I don't know. I couldn't resist. Las Vegas officials report.
Moving on.
Yes, moving on. Thank God. Las Vegas officials report a very rare water surge in the iconic lake after a record rainfall. Oh, that's really cool. And they're talking about Lake Mead, I guess.
I'm guessing, yeah.
Yeah, and I've been to Lake Mead. It is beautiful there, but
Yes,
the water fluctuates. Look at the marks on the stratus on the rocks.
Well, do you remember a few years ago when it was super low and they were finding all kinds of strange things? In the
Yeah,
bottom?
it was really low. Like it was down to some inches in a few areas.
Yeah, it was.
Now it's pretty full. It looks pretty average right now.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the way it works. Las Vegas officials report a rare water surge into the iconic lake after record rainfall. Here's why it matters. In a rare twist for the desert city, Las Vegas just experienced a historic downpour, and it's sending much needed water into Lake Mead. Thanks to a powerful low-pressure system, Las Vegas shattered its nearly 60-year record for May. Isn't that the way things are supposed to work? It balances eventually, right?
Yeah.
Not on our timeline, but over the overall picture, things do balance. Somebody in chat said, "Are we early?" No, you're not early. You're right. You're right on time. We're doing news.
Yeah. Doing our thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
We're talking about toilet paper. You missed the toilet paper conversation.
Yeah, that's what we do here on Untold. Anyhow, apparently they get a lot of crucial stormwater runoff, and it looks pretty good.
Plus, demand is down. Las Vegas tourism is way down.
Yeah,
so
I've heard.
So they're using less water too. So a good time for that lake.
Less hot showers. Less showers.
Yeah.
All right, next.
Next.
Head-turning footage captures the next generation flying machine as it takes to the skies. This is the first step towards the Jetsons, the real Jetsons. Here we go. I've been waiting for this moment to happen. And they keep talking about it because and I know the drone technology is there. It's basically a big drone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's for us all to have our own little helicopters to crash into trees and whatnot every day. Think when everybody starts going airborne, what a fun mess that's going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll almost have to be AI controlled. I don't think we're capable.
I think so. I think you're right. I'm just joking.
I mean, people can't figure out a roundabout. They're not going to figure out how to keep them crashing into each other.
It'll have to be computer controlled. All right. So head-turning footage captures next-gen flying machine as it takes to the skies, the first step towards the Jetsons. Yahoo, it says here, is using AI to generate takeaways from the article. Why did I read that? Because it's in here, and I didn't take it out. That was a mistake I made. Sorry.
I actually have some video here. You did send me some video. It's not
of this? No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, well,
I'm gonna skip ahead. It's got a big long intro. I skipped ahead to where it gets cool.
And actually take one home to go fly in unrestricted
airspace. Here you go.
I think that's what's so incredible to me is that you don't need a pilot's license in order to fly it. How is that?
Well, the ultralight category does actually permit non-certificated pilots to fly an aircraft. And here he goes.
Oh, here we go.
He's up and he's cruising by pretty quiet, isn't it?
Really not that loud.
Yeah, so he's in cruise flight, that forward flight.
All right, that's enough. We get the idea. That looks fun. Looks dangerous. Looks fun.
Yeah.
Let's see. What other takeaways from this wonderful article here? It says you don't need a pilot's license. And my question is, can you drink while you're flying these things, Jeff? Can you have a cocktail?
You might have to just handle the stress of letting a computer fly you around.
Oh my God! Apparently, these what do they call them? eVTOL, electric.
Vehicle. VTOL is vertical takeoff and landing. So
okay,
eVTOL.
Thank you. So apparently these vertical takeoff and landing planes, they've been around a long time, but they're just getting them perfected. It says after 13 years of development and numerous testing phases, the eVTOL design operates smoothly, efficiently, and quietly in the air. All right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, Jeff, you can run to the bank and a nice, what do you think they're going to run? 100,000? 200?
I can't imagine they're cheap.
Go get a
Oh,
loan.
it says
right here. $190,000.
I don't have that in my pocket right now, so I'm going to have to wait.
No. It says, meanwhile, the company is pursuing opportunities in defense and public safety sectors, of course. All right, next. All right. And now we have apparently, I don't know if everybody's aware, there was a huge eruption at Mount Etna. Sends crowds running. That would be a little scary because you don't really know. One of these things could really blow, or they can just blow a little bit, right?
And it comes fast.
Yeah, and I think I sent you a little video.
You did.
Go ahead and play that. Crazy. Crazy, huh?
Well, thanks.
It says tourists on an expedition near Mount Etna were filmed running for safety after a massive ash plume. I always want to say ass plume, but I said it right, ash plume.
Yeah.
Erupted from the volcano on Monday, right? So apparently, and this is near Sicily's eastern coast, as I remember.
Etna's on Sicily.
Yep. So apparently they reported it to aviation authorities, blah, blah, blah. Hell, I'd be flying through those black clouds just for fun. Yeah. It's kind of boring. Thanks. Just another volcano. Who cares?
Have you ever been to Pompeii in Italy?
Hell no. No, I've been to Europe, obviously, but I never went to Italy.
Oh man, Pompeii.
I met all the Italians in Germany, Jeff. They were all in Germany.
Yeah. Well, you've got a real live Italian on your show right now.
Yes, I know.
But Pompeii. Pompeii. I'm sure everybody knows what Pompeii is. But oh man, walking through there is.
I would imagine it's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh.
Me and you have never swapped European stories because I got a bunch of them.
Yeah, I do too.
I got some crazy ones, man.
I have G-rated ones, PG-rated ones, and R-rated ones.
I got all just like weird dreamlike ones. All right. Invasive Argentine tegus. How do you say it, Jeff? Tegus?
Tegus? I don't know.
Tegus? I'll say tegus. And you guys can laugh at me later. Have found a home in Florida, just what they need, another invasive species. So apparently in Jupiter, Florida, that's where this picture was taken. Tegus are like a cross between an iguana and a snake and a lizard. And people are seeing them more often near Palm Beach County. The invasive Argentine black and white tegu has reproducing populations now, all the way down to Miami-Dade and Charlotte counties, according to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Scientists also discovered an emerging population in St. Lucie County. So anyhow, they got tegus everywhere. So,
because some idiot let their pet go. Their pet.
Don't let your tegus go.
Don't.
You got a tegu? Do not let them go. I swear to God, someday we're just going to have everything roaming around everywhere.
Yeah.
Because animals adapt too.
Plants too. I'm fighting Asian trees in my yard. They just grow so fast.
Perfect.
It's a never-ending battle. Every spring I'm killing them, and they just keep coming back. They're amazing.
Yeah. Anyway. A lot of things from Asia are more tenacious.
Yeah.
All right. Next, last surviving member of the Monkees, Mickey Dolenz, and by the way, Mickey is an old acquaintance of mine. Yeah. And he asked for fan support for Make-A-Wish. He's the last one left, which is crazy. Yeah. But I met Mickey. I'll read this article, but I met him in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in a bar of all places. And we became friends and did a lot of, back and forth trying to come up with an idea for a TV show. And then I got called away for Monster Quest. And I abandoned Mickey.
Sorry. I actually met him in a bar too in Atlanta, probably 2010-ish.
Yeah,
Met him with his daughter at a convention.
Yeah, his daughter, Amy.
Amy, super nice guy.
Yeah.
Just a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he really is. He's like the most unpretentious person I've ever met.
Just kind. Very nice guy.
Yeah, super nice. Anyhow, it says the last surviving member of the hit 1960s group, the Monkees, recently made a plea to his fans for support for a cause that's near and dear to his heart. Mickey Dolenz, now 80, it's hard to believe, shared on Instagram and Facebook that fans can show their support both for the Monkees and the Make-A-Wish Foundation by buying some of the Monkees merchandise. So he's tied it in with Make-A-Wish.
Cool.
And
really
he
cool.
is the last remaining.
Charity.
Yeah, he's the last remaining Monkees. Monkey, not monkeys. Monkey.
Yep.
And Davy Jones died in 2012.
He was the first one.
Peter Tork died in 2019. And when did Nesmith die?
Not that long ago. Probably 4 years ago, I think.
Okay. That's crazy. It says Dolan's joke that he was just glad to be above ground.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he is such a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Big fan.
Super nice guy. So what else here? Oh, I was going to mention when he gave me his business card. This goes way back, but he gave me his business card. All his business card says is Amy's father. That's his business card. I love it. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else we've got here? That's it for little untold news, I think.
Yeah.
Is Mr. Adam around?
Yeah,
We want to do
ready to go.
All right.
Got a thumbs up from Adam.
Okay. So we have a live with Adam Colt. He is out in Colorado in a remote area. And I don't know. I just think it's just cool as hell. Obviously, he's hoping to have a encounter, a Bigfoot encounter. He's in a Bigfoot active area. I think he's there with his son. And I don't know. I forgot everything I was going to say for some reason.
Well, you've got a bumper for him.
Oh,
and you've got a video.
Well, yeah, let's go ahead and play that.
Yep.
And let's bring him on then.
Okay.
Now, a live field report via satellite from the wilds of Pike National Forest in Colorado at 9,000 foot elevation. It's Adam Colt's live Legend Meets Science field report. Now here is Adam Colt.
That's a fun new bumper. And where did Doug go?
Yeah, and Adam, I'm here. You hear me, right? You can hear me.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't need to see me. But anyhow, so Adam is he's in Colorado, and he's doing research down there. And he was kind enough to come on, and I don't know, what else do we need to do? Let's see, hold on here. There was some movie sample. We'll let him introduce it. There was some.
I have it queued up, but yeah.
Oh, you have it queued up. Okay, great. Let's bring Adam Colt. Good friend, Adam Colt.
Welcome, Adam.
There he is.
Hello.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Absolutely.
It's like you're in my living room.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Starlink. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm sitting here by the dead fire because the rain just came through, and now we finally just have a break in the rain right now, so that's great.
Well, perfect.
Hey, look.
Perfect. So, tell us about the location you're at first.
It's near Wellington Lake, Colorado.
Okay.
It's a site that Jim told me about a couple years back.
Jim Myers.
Yeah, Jim Myers, and I
From the
to make,
Sasquatch Outpost.
yeah.
Okay.
And he specifically picked a spot that was up on top of the castle, which is a rock formation that they have. It's beautiful. It's in the video that you see. So when you see a lake and a rock formation in the background, that's called the castle. And I guess they have quite a few sightings up behind the castle. We're down further on a dirt road in a dispersed campsite. So we're going to be out here for a couple of weeks. This is day 3 for us, and it's been rough with the weather. So
yeah,
but we did have one crazy thing happen on night 1 during the rain. Something did shake the tent quite a bit. Now I thought it could have just been the wind, but then at some point the tent actually bent down, and the top of the tent was coming towards my face, and I'm like, that's not normal.
That's not the wind, Adam.
And then it snapped back up. I did have an audio recorder out, and even though I didn't hear any footsteps in the tent, when I play back the audio on the recorder, it does sound like something was walking around the campsite.
Wow.
So it not great evidence, just
no, but that's day 1. You've got quite a bit of time left.
Yeah, exactly. So
plus you've had bad weather.
Yep.
But to get your tent messed with like that, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty bizarre because there was, it was like they came and they shook one side of it.
Yeah.
Expected a reaction, but my son was asleep and I wasn't going to give him the reaction. And then they shook it again. And then basically they walked around the tent and they shook like all 4 quadrants of the tent and then pushed the top in.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I don't know. Again, I was looking for shadows. I was listening for footsteps. I didn't see any. We did have some of those Jackery batteries inside the tent that was giving off some illumination. So maybe it was illuminating the inside of the tent and I wasn't able to see through the material.
Ah, gotcha.
There's some, reasonable explanations, but again, I can't really put this one in the books because I didn't see anything for sure.
And to make sure everybody know you are live right now. This is all live. Me and Jeff are live and you're live.
On a little tour, I can give you a little tour.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
Please do.
All right, great. I got this little gimbal here. I'm going to take it off the tripod. Give me a second to unscrew it.
Okay.
And then, so this is where I'm at. And as you can see, we've got a lot of clouds in the skies. There's my campsite behind me.
Yep.
And then everything's wet. It's just, it's not fun being out here. It's about 50 degrees. I'm kind of cold, shivering a little bit. But I wanted to show you these trees over here. We've got a lot of them walking into the woods right now here. So over here, we got a tree. The first thing you see when you go inside the campsite is all these trees that are marked up. And this particular one is pretty bad. And I'm just like, I don't know what, maybe your viewers can chime in, more hunters and stuff, because I don't know if it's a deer or an elk.
I don't know. Jeff, do you want to, let's just click our cameras off and let Adam go full screen. Just leave our audio on.
So tell me what did that?
Well, obviously it could be a bear.
Yeah.
But
that's what I'm
really, blackbirds don't sharpen their claws. That, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But
there's mule deer and white-tailed deer in Colorado, and they will do that. Not normally that
with their
big.
Antlers.
Yeah, that kind of looks like a deer rub, but it's really big.
Oh, there's
They normally
another
don't rub
one
that
right
big.
behind you that looks like a stump. That's all.
Yeah, I'll walk over to the stump right now. So, all right.
Have you seen any other wildlife up there?
Oh yeah, we've seen bison and deer and donkeys and
Really?
all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
And you're at about how many thousand feet? 6,000?
Oh, 9,000, closer to 9,000.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So you see
It's a
all the
beautiful
marks.
area.
There are some hatchet marks here, but
Ah,
a lot of this is scraped. So
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, there you go.
No idea. But it's
So-
just cool. It's cool to see the area that you guys are camping in.
yeah,
It looks like you got a big area all to yourself. And of course,
do.
the
Huge.
wide angle lens makes it look bigger.
I don't even, I'm just using the FaceTime camera, so it's not even the wide angle. So, but yeah, so there's 11 sites up here. I highly recommend if anybody wants to get away from society, come on up here. It's really cool.
Beautiful
and
place.
The road is about 30 miles long, and the sites are distributed along that 30 miles. So they're really far apart.
Loretta asked, is the air a little thin up there? Have you noticed breathing problems?
Oh, yeah. 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 So you get tired quicker. You get winded faster, obviously. So.
Have you seen any elk?
Not this trip. Last time I was here, I saw several herd of elk. That was pretty cool. So.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of opinions on what's going on. The main thing is what happens at night.
Yeah.
Right. So what is the plan? What are your plans up there?
Well, as you can see, I started putting up some in the distance here. Let me see if
cameras.
Gimbal, the little white guy in the distance there. Can you see it? Maybe you can't, but I started putting up some cameras around the site.
Okay.
They're going to be going, live. The biggest problem, of course, is power. So just everything eats power up here. All the cameras, all the Starlinks. It'd be nice to have a plug-in, an outlet somewhere. So,
does the Starlink use a lot of power?
About 70 watts.
Oh,
anywhere from 40 to 70 watts.
Okay.
So if you know that light bulb in your refrigerator, just open that door and it'll just suck that much power all day long.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's not terrible, but
very interesting.
If you got to bring your power with, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So we have some clip to play, correct, Jeff?
Yes.
That's my way in. I filmed some fun little clips on the way in to this campsite, and everything you see in this video has been filmed in the last 2 days on the way into this campsite.
Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and run that. How long is it, Adam?
1 minute, 6 seconds.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and play it.
I guess those are bighorn sheep.
Yeah, it looks like it.
We've got some bison. Those are owned. They were in a pasture. So, lots of mud and just beautiful scenery.
Yeah, beautiful vistas.
Everywhere you look, it's beautiful.
I love that state. Colorado's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And what elevation do you think you're at then?
Around 9,000 feet.
9,000, yeah.
And that's the castle right there. So, and there's a pretty treacherous road to get up here, and you have to cross a washout that's about 3.5 feet deep of water. It's pretty treacherous.
You're not expecting to see any other humans, I take it?
We've only seen a couple, Jeep type 4x4s coming through here. Probably maybe 5 or 6 people in the last 2 days. So not a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But they're just passing through. They're not, there's nobody camping around here. So I think the closest campsite to us is probably 2 miles away, maybe 3. It's down towards the lake there.
Yeah. And you've got your son with you, correct?
Yeah. Just the two of us. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Nice.
Well,
very cool.
Well, a little jealous.
Well, the main thing is we're looking forward to our report next Wednesday. You're going to still be there next Wednesday, correct? Unless you get eaten.
Unless we get eaten or rained out, incredibly rained out.
Yeah.
The rain has just been torrential.
So what about bugs there? Any bugs?
Bugs are not a big deal here. No, Michigan was horrible last week.
Yeah.
We were going to do a live report from Michigan, but man, the bugs were just killing me.
Yeah.
So, there you go. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. Well, this is kind of a tease for what happens next week.
Let's hope
if you had that kind of activity on night 1,
yep,
you got a whole week up there now. I can only imagine what might happen.
Yeah, and it's super. As you can tell, I'll just stop talking. It's crazy quiet.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Beautiful. Great signal too with the satellite. It's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. This is using Elon Musk's Starlink.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no service up here whatsoever. So.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. And of course, if whatever Adam gets will end up in Legend Meet Science if he gets anything cool. So we're excited. Well, with that, we'll let you go and get back to your whatever you're doing.
Dinner's next.
Just relaxing. You know, it's cool though when you can go bigfooting and still relax.
Yeah, there with the rain, there hasn't been a whole lot of relaxing yet, but I'm hoping that it'll come.
Yeah, there will be, except at night.
Yeah, we'll be up all night, you know.
Yeah, who knows?
All right.
Who knows? All right, great. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
It was awesome. Thanks. All right.
Alrighty.
I wish I was there. It reminds me of being up at snow.
Oh man, I'd love to be there right now.
Yeah, it's tough.
I'm a little jealous. I love that state.
Yeah.
And I love being out in the woods. It's
But
nice.
at least we've got the satellite technology to get them on, and I can communicate with them, and during the week, and keep them up at night if I need. If he's got, sometimes he'll call me late, and I stay up late with him, and just because there's stuff that happens during the night, and he can get some live feedback from me, so it's kind of fun. But anyhow, we wish Adam luck. All right. Yeah. What time is it getting to be? I think we're
almost 8. We got Brian's ready to go. It looks like.
Oh, okay. We have our guest, and I've got some clips. Let me just see if there's anything. One of them I wanted to. Oh, we have the weird Amazon products, and we got all sorts of stuff. What the hell happens to time?
It goes by quick.
I know it goes.
Didn't help that we started 15 minutes late.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
That didn't help.
I know. Okay, we'll save the clips for next. I had some really good clips too.
Yeah.
Save the clips for next week, and maybe we can do some of the Amazon stuff, Amazon products, which are kind of fun, with our guest.
With Brian, sure.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and let's do a little introduction. I'm just scrolling through my long notes. Today was definitely a big note day. So Brian Goddard has been fascinated by the paranormal for as long as he can remember. But everything changed at age 16 when he and a friend had a close encounter with what he believes was a Bigfoot. And this was on his family's wooded property. So that actually has more of an effect on you if you own the property, I think.
I would imagine so.
It just does. Because it just brings it, more towards home, makes it more real. And we'll hear the details of that. But a few years later, while attending Columbus State Community College, he experienced the other ghostly sightings in both a classroom building and a campus library. And these encounters sparked a lifelong journey into the unexplained. And I'll just kind of leave it there, and we'll let Brian tell us about this stuff. Brian, are you ready to come on Untold Radio?
He looks ready. All righty.
He said no. No, I think he's smiling. Let's go ahead and do you have any disclaimer or anything you got to play, Jeff?
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
And we're back, and welcome, Brian. Hello.
There he is. Hey, Brian, how are you? We have never met, but you were one of my Facebook friends.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yes.
Nice so it's good to kind of see you in person.
Yeah, it's good to meet you.
Nice to have you on the show.
Weird circumstances. Very weird.
It's good to be here.
So anyhow, let's kind of dive into it. And apparently you had some experience at age 16. Do you want to just dive right in and tell us what that was? And you can give us all the details you want.
Absolutely. My best friend PJ and I were playing paintball that weekend. We grew up in the west side of Cleveland, and my parents owned property in Pennsylvania, right over the Ohio line. It's the first exit into Pennsylvania. And we would go up on the weekends. Sometimes they had an old trailer we used to camp out of and whatnot. And we were playing paintball from Friday all the way until Saturday night. And in our infinite wisdom, we thought it would be a great idea to play at night. So it was somewhere between 10 and midnight. And we, at one point, I think we had duct tape laser pointers to our cheap paintball guns.
Mm.
That we were trying to make it easier to find each other so we could actually hit each other. And we were out in the woods, taking shots at each other, messing around with the laser pointers. I took mine off and I would put it somewhere and try to trick him out. So I got to a point where I had doubled back around him. At least that's what I thought. And I was, I saw what I thought was him in the woods. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to sneak up behind him. He's never going to see me. I'm going to unload and then laugh hysterically. So I slowly creeped around. It didn't seem like he noticed I was there. Got into position, waited a second, aimed. And these were cheap, like Walmart paintball guns, so they weren't anything too powerful. But I started shooting, and sometimes you hit the trees, but sometimes you don't. I could see I'm hitting him, but he's not reacting. And we're both wearing T-shirts because it was relatively warm, and when you're 16, you're immortal. So paintball doesn't necessarily hurt that. You don't think about it. It's the bruise you're going to have the next day. He wasn't reacting, and I started to move in a little bit closer, and all of a sudden this thing started standing up. And at that moment, I realized that wasn't PJ. And as it stood up, so just as a point of reference, I am 6'8". I was this tall at age 16. And when this thing stood up, it was easily 2 or 3 feet taller than I was.
Oh, gee.
Wow.
And that's a very rare thing for me, especially that big of a difference. It's just awkward. I'm so used to being the tallest person in every room I walk into. So you clearly remember it when you see something that massive stand up and tower over you, because that's never happened to me before. And once I realized what it was, well, actually at the time I didn't know what it was. It's just I realized it had legs, had arms, and frankly my fight or flight response kicked in, and I took off running faster than I've ever run in my life. And I was on, I guess you could call it a side trail, and my friend PJ was on what we used to call the main trail. The other trails kind of shot off that one. As it turns out, he was coming running up the trail, and he about plowed me over when I stopped to look behind me to see if it was following me or not. And he thought he had doubled back around me, and he was shooting from the other side, trying to hit this thing that he thought was me. And he came to the same conclusion when the thing started standing up that it wasn't me, and he took off running. So the two of us are standing there, and we look over, and the thing had kind of walked over. That we both looked at each other, and then took off running. And I'm telling you, I've never moved that fast before in my life or since. And we shot went into the trailer, locked the door. We looked at the back windows. There was nothing there. We looked around for a few minutes. We weren't going outside again. That's for sure. We dropped the paintball guns. We just took off, not even cared. And we first weren't sure what we saw, so we spent a few hours, actually most of the night, talking about it. So okay, well, what the heck just happened? And we went through it. We're like, well, maybe it was a black bear. Well, no, black bears aren't that big. It's not to be 2 or 3 feet taller than I am. And he's about 6'3", 6'4". He's not a small guy either. And if it was, there's no grizzly bears, in that part of Ohio, Pennsylvania. We don't have any grizzly bears whatsoever. In fact, black bears are very rare. Not only that, it walked towards us. It was bipedal, and a bear may take a few steps, maybe go a foot or so, but it's not going to walk continuously. and the thing was moving fast, but it wasn't running, if that makes sense. It was just, I think it realized that we were more terrified of it than it was of us, if it even was terrified of us. I'm not actually sure that it was. And we were not interested in sticking around to take a look at it. But as we talked about it, so we ruled out the black bear, and we came to two conclusions. Either one, there is a 10-foot guy walking around in Pennsylvania in a gorilla suit on private property, and just happened to be cutting through the woods without shooting paintball, or we just saw a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And
how long did it take you to come to that conclusion?
Pretty much all night.
All night. Okay. So
most of the night, yeah, we were up for a while, and then because we were pretty shaken up because there was something out there. It looked human in a way. It had legs, arms, but I didn't get that good of a look at its face because I was too busy running. Because you see this thing in the woods just standing up, and you just freak out. You know what I mean? Even though I always had believed that they were out there, I never expected to see one at my parents' place. You know what I mean?
How old were you? How old were you?
About 16.
16. Okay.
Yeah.
That was. It's got to be just like a complete reality. It just shattered everything you believed or knew.
I had always believed that they were out there. I just never thought. I was never sure that I would actually ever encounter one. They were so elusive. And Ohio seems to be a hotbed. There's a lot of sightings. Ohio, Pennsylvania. We have quite a bit of action here. And there was other sightings during that time, as I've found over with doing research over the years. There was quite a few sightings in that area around that time, so we weren't the only ones. But for a lot of years, we didn't really even talk about it because it was almost surreal. And my friend PJ said it best: if you weren't there, he said, I would never have told anybody about it ever.
Yeah.
But since you were there and you saw it too, I know I'm not crazy. I'm not hallucinating.
How would you have felt? Would you have told anybody had you been alone?
I don't know. I like to be very sure before I come to a conclusion. That's why I always say we believe it was a Bigfoot. Can I prove that beyond a reasonable doubt of 100%? No. But if you rule out everything else, all that's left, and the odds of a Sasquatch or a 10-foot guy in a gorilla suit, I mean, chances are it's a Sasquatch is basically what we came to. But yeah, I don't know if he had not been there, if I would have necessarily talked about it either, because it's such a surreal experience when you see one of these things in close, and they're massive, they're fast. And, we've had conversations with our wives about this over the years, and they both are convinced we saw a black bear. The argument remains the same. We're like, no, a black bear is not taller than I am. That's not, and it can't walk like that. And 3, if it was a bear, it would have more than likely, especially if we're shooting paintballs from each side, it probably would have ran. Now, there's a possibility it would have attacked one of us, in which case it would have caught us and it would have won. So, but we're both still here. So it was not a bear, And when it slowly kind of came to approach, we were not interested in sticking around to see what it wanted. In hindsight, now if the same thing happened, I'd probably be running towards it, not away. But
well, what did you? What exactly did you see?
So it looked like it was a black or a brown color. It was originally kneeling in the woods. I was facing it. The trailer and where the main clearing was to my left. The Sasquatch, or as we believe it was facing towards the right. So I was at a side angle. And it never occurred to me that anything else would be out there. So I just assumed it was PJ, and it was dark, I mean, there was the stars, there was moon. It was a decently bright enough night that I could see a figure there, but wasn't close enough to get a good look at him. But it never occurred to me that someone else would be out there. There's 3 adjoining properties. I think one is 10 or 11 acres. My parents are on roughly 12, and there's a 5 or 6 acre property, and then there's like a 500 or 600 acre farm or something ridiculous like that. That's the other adjoining. And then across the street, it's the same thing. There's a massive farm, 500-600 acres, whatever they are.
How far
away
all
around them?
How far away is the water? Is there creeks, streams, lakes?
So it's where they are. The other side on Ohio is Ashtabula, and where they are is between Ashtabula and Erie. So Lake Erie is literally right there. The Ohio River's right there. My parents have 2 ponds on their property. They did at that time. There's one in the front and there's one in the back, the bigger one, which is where I'd walked around when it was in the woods and I thought I was going to be taking shots at PJ. And so so to answer your question, yes, there's a couple streams, water sources, things like that in the area. And the other thing too, over the years when we've talked about it, it was a weekend place, and there would be times we were out every weekend. Sometimes it could be a busy summer and we didn't go out for weeks or perhaps even months. So I've always wondered, was it passing through because it didn't think that anyone would be there because we may not have been there or, a lot consistently enough for it to notice that someone was living there. So it may have thought that it was safe. There's a water source right there. There's certainly small animals, there's vegetation on the property, things like that. And there's farms all over the place. So I would imagine there's, food source if they needed it. And it may have just been passing through, not realizing anyone was there because that is particularly empty more than not at that time.
Finding the trackway, so that's just north of where Amy Boo had her sighting.
I know Amy, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the area does have a history, obviously.
So the research that I did in the 90s in Ashtabula County, there were probably around a dozen sightings that were documented. Now, I always preface this with, remember in the 90s, we still had dial-up. Everyone was using AOL. Nobody had websites. So either you knew who to contact or you called a news station if you were that comfortable with it. But most people probably didn't do anything. They probably saw it, maybe told some friends, things like that, but they probably didn't report them. So I've always believed this. Well, okay, so if there's a dozen, how many that have been documented now from various sources of media, different things like that? How many sightings weren't documented? The Ashtabula area in the last 5 or 10 years has built up, but where my parents, they live out there, they live there full time now. They built a house out there and nothing has changed since I was 8 years old out there. Not a thing. There's no new building. There's no new houses. There's no developments. It's exactly the way it was. And every now and again, you'll still hear about sightings out there, but it's not like it was back then. And I would imagine Erie's grown as a city. It's kind of expanded that direction. Ashtabula's expanded towards the Pennsylvania line. So I imagine that there's not quite as much room as there once was. And that's probably why the sightings have gone down a little bit, just because of space. But, there's the Ohio sightings and then there's the Pennsylvania sightings. And there was, give or take, about 8 or 10 in Pennsylvania that were reported as well, in addition to the ones on the Ohio side of it. In the surrounding counties and things like that. So again, I wonder if there's 25, 30 sightings reported, how many sightings didn't get reported?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, you can guess between 1% and 10% get reported. That's it. That's
if the 1%, or even 5%, 10% for that matter, if 30 is 10%, we're talking a big number of sightings out there, which makes sense. There was tons of woods at that time.
Yeah.
Lake, rivers, streams, ponds, like I said, it's very rural, a lot of farmland. So there's plenty of and in a lot of ways still is, there's plenty of space for them to hide. Ohio has a lot of cave systems here. And with the Ohio River right there, if they wanted to travel through the water, I'm sure their ability to withstand the current is much different than ours.
How far is the Ohio River from where the sighting occurred?
There's a river. You could walk from where my parents' house is. There's a dead end gravel street. There used to be a covered bridge, but it caught on fire about 20 years ago. But the river runs right there. We used to jump in the river. There was an old tree there that had some kids that tied a rope to when I was growing up. And
okay, so it's really close to where.
Yeah, you could walk there.
Okay.
So it's yeah, and there's the neighbors across the street have ponds. There's a lot of ponds and things in the area, and pretty large ponds. They're stocked with fish. So there's plenty of stuff for them to eat.
Well, for those who are skeptical, who may be listening to this about these sightings, the geographic features where these sightings happen are so consistent. That alone should convince people. They don't happen in dry areas. They're always near water, constantly. Why? Obviously they have a need for water. They've adapted to, it could be everything from eating frogs and toads to whatever. We don't know. But you just don't get the reports when you get away from streams, creeks, and water and lakes. They're not there. It's just fascinating. And so you were really close to numerous bodies of water, including rivers and creeks. What do you think the nearest creek was to where your sighting occurred? Or a small stream?
There's a couple streams and stuff that are seasonal that run through their property.
Oh, okay. And
things like that. But the farms all around there, and I couldn't tell you which Sackable Woods belongs to which, but just hiking through there over the years, you come across different streams and little bodies of water here and there.
Right.
But a lot of people have ponds in that area. That's a very normal thing there.
Yeah.
And there's, with the river being right there's people that are back up to that a little bit.
Well, how many yards away was your sighting from water? How many yards?
Well, the back pond at my parents' house was probably within 30 feet of where we saw that thing, 40 feet.
What's the next body of water?
The pond in their front is,
okay.
So then after that, it would go, the next largest body that I could think of would be just the river running down the street that goes under what used to be a bridge, and like I said, a lot of these farmlands, they all have some kind of body of water on them. So there's plenty of water out there.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how far you want to go out, if you look at a map of the sightings around, like, for example, if you take Erie and you look at the sightings around it, there's Erie because it's right on Lake Erie, so that makes sense. There's Conneaut Lake, which is a massive lake. That's about
how far from Lake Erie? Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. How far from Lake Erie, Brian?
Driving?
Yeah.
20 minutes probably, because you can be on the Ohio side in Conneaut. The Conneaut Harbor is probably about 20 minutes from where they are driving, and at that time it wouldn't, even Conneaut has come a long way since that time. There's a lot more stuff there than there used to be, so they're very easily could have come from the lake itself, I suppose, if they really wanted to, because there would be nothing stopping them. And Ashtabula's on the lake as well, so it's
yeah, they really should be categorized as water apes or water, because aquatic creatures, because the sightings are never far from water.
I suspect that just like us, they require probably quite a bit of water.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that, we have Florida where there's skunk apes, I would imagine that they probably have some level of hygiene, because not everyone reports smelling them.
Right.
If you live outside in the woods, I would expect you to smell a little bit potentially.
And I really do think that smell is from their apocrine glands under their armpits, that they can produce this really horrid stench, almost rotten, meaty stink. But I think they're producing that. I don't think it's a hygiene thing. I really don't.
That's very possible.
I'm pretty sure it's glandular. That's a tough word to say. Jeff, what do you think about I mean, just his sighting. You know, Jeff hasn't really had a lot of Bigfoot experiences. I know he believes in the topic big time, but what do you think when you heard Brian's story? What's going through your mind, Jeff?
Well, it's highly plausible and credible. I mean, he obviously knows what he's talking about, and yeah, like you said, I mean, you're obviously smart enough to know that it wasn't a bear. What else is 10 foot tall? I mean, not many things are that big.
Yeah, and it didn't do anything aggressive, or it kind of, was it curious? Do you think it was curious about you guys?
I think it was curious. That's why I think it actually approached a little bit.
Okay.
I have a suspicion, and this didn't occur to me until I was talking to somebody on Monday, my friend Matthew, and he's with Drunken Cryptids, but he said, do you ever think that maybe it was watching you? And I had never really looked at it that way, but looking back, it would have been in a position to see both of us, and maybe that's why it was hunched down, as it was just kind of curious what we were doing out there and why we were running at each other and then running away from each other. Maybe that's why it moved in closer. It just simply wanted to know what we were doing. Because it does seem like they're curious, even though they don't necessarily want to be involved with us. It does seem like they're in the backdrop. People see them watching in the distance, or you walk up on one, but then they disappear so fast. So it seems like if they don't want to be seen, they're not going to. And I don't know if are you seeing one because there's two others that are seeing you, and the one that you're seeing is simply a distraction so they can observe how you're going to react? Maybe. I don't know. But now, rethinking that after my friend Matthew, I was like, that's a good point. I don't know. It's very possible there could have been more out there. We would not have seen them. It was just happenstance we came on this one. If I had taken another route, I very well could have walked by and not seen it if it didn't stand up. And the same thing with PJ. If he had gone a different route, we may not have been in the position to catch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I've got to clarify here. Now, Mike is kind of joking around, but did you actually take a shot at this with your paintball gun?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we were taking shots. Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure we hit it. And that's one of the things too, that if it was a bear, it would have reacted. It would have made a noise. It would have growled. We would have pissed it off. It would have done something.
Yeah, probably.
And it seemed like, once as it was standing up, it was pretty hairy as far as we could tell. And I've suspected, because these guns weren't powerful and we weren't super close, with their hair being so thick, and sometimes primates have thicker skin as well than we do, it may have barely noticed that we were even taking shots at it.
Yeah.
It could have felt like a fly or a mosquito to hit. Because they're so much more massive and they have so much hair.
Yeah.
I don't know that it felt like it was a threat. You know what I'm saying?
What color was it?
I think it was either some kind of a dark brown or a black.
Okay.
I mean, once it started standing up and it got to my eye level and kept going, I was already starting to turn and run. You know what I mean? It was just instinct. I didn't even think about it. It stood up and I realized how big, and I just, sticking my head up, and I'm sure my jaw probably hit the trail.
I don't know. I'm having a weird day today where my brain is like, me and Jeff were joking about it earlier. How close do you think you were? For how many yards? Somehow I've missed that.
I would think 15 feet, give or take.
Oh,
close. Very close.
20 feet. So I was pretty close. I think PJ was a little bit further on the other side.
So you're 5 yards from this thing. Holy moly.
It was close. And that's the thing but it was dark out. So I still couldn't tell it wasn't him. Not really until it stood up. And I was like, well, maybe he's wearing a sweatshirt. Maybe he you know what I mean? I had all sorts of things. Because I was like, necessarily look like him, but who the heck else is going to be out here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, the way I understand it, you thought you were shooting at your friend, right? You're shooting people at your buddy. Yeah.
It never occurred to me that anything else would be out there.
Why would it?
Well, those paintball guns are really quiet. I mean, they're kind of a pop. There's not a lot of report with them. They're pretty quiet.
Yeah. So it never crossed my mind in all the years since my parents had bought that place. I grew up out there. I could tell you every square inch of that property today. And, never from, I think I was about 7, 8 when they bought that place until 16, did we ever see anyone other than us on that property. We almost barely, there was one neighbors they had a kid around my age, and we barely, sometimes years went by before we would see, because it's just so big. Like they wouldn't be, in the woods along, because there was a couple acres between us, you know what I mean? So we didn't necessarily see anybody. And we never saw anyone who wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
My dad had no trespassing signs plastered everywhere. My parents are they're against hunting in general, so they just didn't want anybody on there, shooting deer or anything else. So they had all these signs up, and we never saw anybody, ever. So it just never occurred to me that anyone, or certainly anything, would be out there. You know what I mean? The last thing I ever thought in the world, I would be like, oh, I'm going to bet you, if it's not PJ, it's probably a Sasquatch. Like that never crossed my mind that that's what that was.
Here's kind of a good question. It says, was there ever a detail or one detail or pattern that consistently gives you chills that you think about, and it's like something you saw other than just the creature? Was it the size? Is there anything? How often do you think about this encounter?
Oh, I think about it a lot.
Yeah.
Especially the last, we, for a lot of years, we didn't really talk about it. And then we started talking about it. And, and then at some point I was like, if we don't share what we saw, other people aren't going to share what they saw. So then
Absolutely.
I just launched my website, put it out there, and started networking. I started posting on Facebook. And
how long did it take you? How long did it take you, Brian, to come out and just be comfortable talking about it? How old were you?
Probably late 20s, early 30s before I really started talking about it. And it just wasn't something, I don't know. I haven't never really had an inkling to talk about it because I was never quite sure. And PJ and I had fell out of touch for a couple of years. And we're still best friends now. We reconnected eventually, but for a few years, about 5 or 10 years there, we'd kind of fallen out of touch because I went away to school, and so we weren't around each other. And then once we reconnected, we're like, do you remember the night? And as soon as I said the night, he said yes, it was a Sasquatch.
Wow.
And he's like, I told my wife. She doesn't believe me. And I was like, I would never say this to anybody if Goddard wasn't there. Because that's the only reason. I was like, I agree. I probably wouldn't say anything either if you weren't there. So I could be like, I know I'm not crazy. I wasn't the only one that saw this thing.
Yeah.
And we believe it was a Sasquatch. Could we be wrong? Absolutely.
That's can you remember some more details, like on width of its stomach or legs or chest or arms or muscles?
It was taller than me, and it was wider than both of us put together. Okay. If you put one of us in front of the other, I was real skinny. PJ was heavier set, but it was taller than I was. It was wider than him. And we were running so fast that after it stood up, and then when we saw it kind of walk towards us, there wasn't really any time to look at it. I would look for those details now, but at that time we were just so scared, frankly. We were just running, you know what I mean? Now if I could go back, I'd be like, oh, let me think here. I would really try. I would probably have stood there and stared at it. I'd be like, wow, look at that thing. I pulled my arms out and try to gauge the shoulder length, try to get closer to it and see, is it 2-3 feet? Which one is it? I think it was closer to 3.
Well, was it?
Yeah.
So what is the one quality though that you did see that just really kind of makes you go, what the heck? Was there the height or the muscles?
The height, the walking, and the fact that it stopped and made a conscious decision not to pursue us, because it could have chased us down. And like I said, I think if it was a bear, there's probably about 3 possibilities. 1, it would have just left the area. 2, it would have attacked one of us, or 3, it would have attacked both of us. Either way, the bear was going to win, if that's what it was. You know, an animal is not going to all of a sudden stop and just decide they're not worth catching. They're more terrified of me than I am of them, or I've seen everything I want to see with what's going on with these 2 idiots. I'm not concerned. You know what I mean? It made a decision, and it was at least 9 feet tall, I think closer to 10. It was covered in hair. It moved fast, but you could tell it was walking. It didn't look like it was running, probably because it had larger strides. You know, being 10 foot tall, I can only imagine the footsteps that thing must take. And the fact that it walked so long, you know, we saw it for a decent distance walking on 2 legs. Nothing, I don't know of any other animal that could do that other than us, you know. And again, the fact that it made a conscious decision to stop and not pursue us. You know, it got to a point and we were terrified. And my personal belief is that they can tell. I think it could tell we were terrified. I don't know if it could smell it. I don't know if their vision picks up something, or if their hearing is better, or all the above, or if they have some sense we're not aware of, or their senses work together better than ours. But I believe it knew we were terrified, and it determined we were not a threat. That's my personal opinion. Because if it wanted to, being as big and fast as it was, it could have killed us both in an instant, and there's nothing we could have done about it.
Yeah.
Well,
let me interrupt you just for a second. Did your friend accept the reality of this thing too? I mean, was he open-minded, or was one of you more skeptical than the other one?
No, he was open-minded.
Okay.
We still, we talk about it all the time. We were talking about it earlier today.
Wow.
You know, we're still
cool thing to
convinced.
bond over.
Is he watching the show?
He is an over-the-road truck driver, so he's
okay.
right
He'll
now.
watch
So
it
he's
later.
probably making a delivery at Home Depot right now.
Okay.
But
Okay.
That's a great way to bond with your friend, though. That's a cool story. I just love it.
It's insane. I mean, even still, I've told.
I know, but
this
doesn't
story
it
for a
still
time.
mess? Doesn't it still mess with your reality even to this day?
Oh yeah.
Imagine.
So yeah, that's why we talk about it so much. Because sometimes I think about it. I'll call him, like, PJ, am I losing my freaking mind here? This really happened to us, right?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I saw it too. Like, you're not crazy. I mean, you were scared, so was I. And he's like, you know, and now we will say the same thing now. We're like, now, you know, we would charge that thing ourselves, and one of us, like, either would go out like men, or we'll get a sample of something and bring it back.
Yeah.
But we would go
Have you
towards
seen
it now.
Have you seen any other evidence in that area since then? Big footprints, tree breaks, anything?
I had mixed feelings on the tree breaks as far as the branches being snapped. I have seen them in the woods where they are snapped easily 10, 15 feet up, and it looks like it was snapped, not like it was naturally broken off over something. But it's hard to tell. Our weather here, it could be snowing in the morning, it could be 85 in the afternoon, and it could be snowing again by 9 o'clock, or there could be a tornado, or it could be sunny 3 hours later after the tornado. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
It's so hard because we get bad windstorms here.
Yeah.
You know, we get just bad storms in general, you know, things like that potentially could have ripped through and ripped some of these branches off.
Sure.
I'm not saying they don't do it. I don't think every broken branch is necessarily, I can't tie them. I've seen them,
Right.
Yeah.
but I have no basis to connect it.
Sure.
I personally think they probably do. I would imagine they want shelter just like we would, or any other animal. You know, people, they find shelter, or that we make it. And if there's some kind of missing link between us and, another primate species, more than likely they would have come to the similar conclusion that shelter is a benefit. So I'm not surprised saying that they don't make it. I see it, but then I can't find tracks around it. I don't find the footprints. So I'm not seeing, I can't connect it. I can't find proof that, yes, this one matches this one. I believe that's probably the case, but like I said, there's just no evidence of it. And I have not found any footprints. We went back the next day, well after the sun came up, and my parents were up in case we came running, and we kind of like creeped out there, looked around kind of cautiously, and then slowly after, probably about half an hour, worked our way back up there. And I can still tell you the exact point on that trail till this day. I know exactly where it was. It's ingrained in my memory. But when we went back the next day.
Yeah, well, I agree with what you said too. If it didn't want to be seen, you wouldn't see it. I mean, it had to have known you were there.
I agree. David Ellis. See, David says, did I hear this happen near Ashtabula?
Ashtabula.
If so, correct, yeah. I'm seeing corridors, power lines, train tracks, also numerous rock pits. In addition to water travel pits and rock pits, they seemed obviously to be, close to a lot of sightings. How close are any of those power lines and so on, corridors near where you saw this thing? Close?
The power to my parents' place is underground.
Okay.
So there weren't really power lines by where they are specifically.
Okay.
There are on the main roads if you were to go up a ways. There was plenty of waterways. I'm sure there's plenty of rock pits and things like that because there's some of the properties are very hilly, unlevel. You know what I mean? You can go up quite a ways. It's all very rural. It still is very rural and very thick. The woods are thick.
Have you ever posted a map publicly on your sighting?
I've never posted a map just because it's where my parents live full time now. So
they live there now.
Yeah, they live there full time now. So I don't want to post,
no explanation.
People walking through their backyard.
I get it.
Yeah, we understand. I thought you guys had moved. Let's see, any other? I'm just looking for some cool questions here. Forbidden Planet says somebody said that they stopped a hostile encounter by praying to Jesus. I have heard. Did you guys, when you realized it was a real animal, were you guys talking to the Lord? Was there any cussings, fear? Where was your head at?
We had a couple choice words. At the time.
Did you? Okay.
We were mostly just scared, though. We had no idea what we saw. It took a long time to wrap our head around it, and then we didn't really want to tell anybody we saw it because people are going to think we're crazy.
Yeah.
But that was the one saving.
Well, who was the first person you told? Was it your parents or your friends? Who'd you tell?
It was probably my friends. I don't know who the first person that I told. I'm not sure who the first person he told either. I know he's told his brothers and stuff about it. I've told mine about it, but
yeah,
my brother said he's never seen a Sasquatch out there. Anyway,
does your family kind of accept what you're saying, or are they laughing at you?
My wife is a skeptic. I think she kind of humors me, but
all right. Good night, everybody. His wife does not believe him. That's terrible. I was going to say the S word. I was like, that's terrible.
Yeah, I think her and my friend PJ's wife, the same thing. The two of them, I think they think it's
poor guys. Nothing worse than your own wife not believing you.
His brothers have told us we're crazy and stuff like that. It's just the stuff that you usually expect. But that's anybody who's told their story, that's what happens. People call you crazy, you get ridiculed.
Yeah.
Like, listen, this is what we saw. we believe it was a Sasquatch. If you can prove it was something different, please do, because I've wondered since I was 16 years old to be 100% sure what that thing was. And if I could go back in time with a camera, I would do it in a second just to know, and that's all. Yeah, I mean, that's it. The people can believe it. They cannot believe it. That's their prerogative. But, that's why people don't come forward, though, too, with these stories, is because people don't believe you. And especially now with the internet, yes, more stories get out there, but at the same time, other stories get kind of bashed or suppressed, so people don't talk about it. So I think it's important for those of us who have had these encounters that we get out here and we say, hey, you are not alone. We're not 100% sure what it is either, but there is something out there, and it's something we don't understand.
Well, how good of a look did you get at it? I mean, you were pretty close. Did you see details in the hair and the face?
I didn't see too much detail
muscles?
in the face.
How about muscles?
I think it was muscular. The arms were wide. The torso was wide. The legs seemed to be wide. I mean, it was proportioned, but it was I don't know how to describe it. Like, picture a 10-foot human. Like, picture Andre the Giant, but a little bit bigger. You know what I mean? A little bit taller and a little bit more like girth to him. Just
wider,
sheer massive body. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, it's just massive. You see this thing, it stands up, and it's like, holy cow. And then you realize, because, it's wider too. I mean, you could clearly see the thing was humongous. And, if you're not expecting to see that in the woods, it's just your instincts just kick in. Yeah. I'm sure other people have had it too, where you see it, you're like, oh, I got to get out of here real fast.
How close is the nearest railroad tracks to this area?
That's a good question. I don't know where the closest railroad tracks are. I'm sure there's some out there. I know there's some in Ashtabula. I believe there's some outside of Erie. I don't know what the closest set would be. I mean, I would think within a half an hour of railroad tracks, if probably less than that, even somewhere.
Yeah, since the railroad bought up so much land on both sides of the tracks and they haven't developed it right, these are great travel corridors. Railroad tracks.
Oh, sure.
They really are.
And again, at that time, the Cleveland area, Erie, Ashtabula was very less developed to what it is now. So it would have been a lot easier for them to move around. And as the years have gone on, the sightings in that area, as it's been developed, have naturally gone down. But in southern Ohio, I think I saw somebody mention in the comments earlier about Salt Fork State Park. There's dozens and dozens of sightings every year.
Yep.
And if you ever go down there, it is a massive park. There's a main road that goes through it. You can go from one end to the other. There's no real stop signs or any lights. Just keep driving, going 55, 60. It takes me over about a half an hour to get from one end of the park to the other.
Yeah,
it's massive.
It's a big park. I've finally got to go through it, and it's crazy.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's just not. You don't think of Ohio as this forested, beautiful area for some reason. I grew up thinking Ohio was like some industrial, mecca where there wasn't even one tree left. It's the opposite.
Yeah,
lots of forest. Lots and lots of forest.
If you get close to the major cities, it is very industrial. But at that time, Ashtabula had no development whatsoever in the 90s. There were no developments. There was nothing really going on out there.
Right.
And same with Erie. It wasn't particularly a large place. And it's not even necessarily a large city now, either one of them. But they have come a little ways. But, it's not like a Cleveland or Columbus or anything anywhere near that large. Not even close.
Did you hear any noise from this creature? Any footprints? Loretta had asked him, did you hear footsteps as it walked towards you? Any noise at all?
There could have been noise. I think my heart was racing so loud. And I was I remember when I got to the main trail and PJ almost plowed me over, my heart was racing. When your heart beats, you feel it in your temples, and you're just like, We were both almost, I don't want to say, I don't know if it's a state of shock is the right word, but we were in a state of something. I mean, we were literally frightened out of our minds.
Full of adrenaline.
So if it did make noise, it probably did. We probably just didn't notice because we were more focused on not getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a sense of smell myself. I never have. I always just have a terrible sense. I can barely smell anything. So if it did smell, I would never know the difference anyways.
Are there any power line cuts near where your sighting happened?
There are, I believe, along the main roads, if I remember correctly, back then there would have been power lines. Where my parents' specific property, the power is underground. There's so many trees in that area, a lot of them were underground back then. But the main roads have power lines. There's telephone poles just like anywhere else. So there's definitely, there's power grids out there. And if you cross the Ohio line, Conneaut's developed. So it was developed even back then. So there were power grids and stuff there, which you could almost throw a rock at Conneaut from where they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's about a 6 or 7 minute ride in the car to cross the border into Conneaut. So you're not that far. And again, Conneaut's right on Lake Erie. So as you mentioned before, the water connection, I don't know if it's just simply because maybe they like fish, maybe, I mean, you learn it when you learn anything about survival. The first thing you know is if you find water leads to population.
Yeah.
Follow the direction of water,
Well, I mean, literally, I always consider them water apes because of their apparent need for large volumes of liquid.
Yeah.
But then again, you think, but the water also provides all the trees and the tree cover, and it's more than just a food source. It's a source of hiding. That provides travel routes
or recreation. I mean, we enjoy being in water. Maybe they do too. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm sure they swim. There's a lot of reports of them swimming. I wouldn't say millions of them, but the ones that are. I mean, they're not that uncommon of people seeing them swim. Do you think that this thing was afraid of you, you and your friend, or do you think it had no fear?
I don't think it had any fear whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it stopped once it realized how terrified we were.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how it knew that. If it could smell it, I know it's, how the animals can smell stuff on you, or a dog can smell stuff. Animals seem to have like a sense about people. They can tell.
Yeah.
How dogs can tell when someone's about to have a seizure. I don't know how that works. My personal belief is that's how the Bigfoots have some ability to detect that. And I think it could maybe it just read our body language. I mean, that's very possible too, in all fairness. I really have no idea. It very well could have done that. But I think it knew that we were terrified, and I think that's why it stopped. I think it was curious. I think it got close enough and it realized how terrified we were, and then we took off running again. And I think that's why it made the decision not to pursue us anymore or come any closer, because it could tell how terrified we were. And I don't know what other word other than terrified even necessarily does it justice.
Well, okay. All right. So now let's figure out what was unique about their property. Food sources, they usually that's, if you're a wild living creature, you're going to look for food sources. Was there something special about the area for food?
I mean, there was a lot of farmland, right there. Both ponds had fish. There's a lot of wild berries and crab apples, stuff like that growing on the property, which kind of what you'd expect in the country. You know what I mean?
Oh, lots of fruit trees, bushes.
Yeah. But again, there were massive farms right there. So they're growing corn, wheat, whatever.
Yeah. What was the time of year? Again, I can't remember.
I think it was, in my mind, it was probably early October, late September, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Let's see here. I was looking for some really cool questions. Time of year, we just answered that. Hold on here. I gotta scroll up. There were some good questions I missed.
We have another encounter to talk about too. A non-Bigfoot encounter.
What's that?
We had a paranormal experience too. We could talk about.
Oh yeah. We'll get into that. We'll get into that. I'm just looking. Are there nearby farms that would have been like, leftover corn? I mean, what do you think? Why was it there? I guess is what I'm getting at.
I think there was, their property alone has the 2 ponds. And since we did not live there full time, it was just a weekend, every other weekend, once a month, however often kind of thing. I think there were never any signs that anyone but us had ever been there. You know what I mean? There was it's like I said, my dad had all these no trespassing signs, no hunting signs plastered all over the place. So I've always suspected that they crossed from one of the nearby farms, or it crossed from a nearby farm just simply because it was convenient. There was food there. There was water. It probably knew that, the 2 of the 3 properties adjoining theirs had residents, and the other one was a farm, and the house was acres away. So that with their properties, hundreds of acres. So that could have come from anywhere from there, and that borders up against another farm and another farm. So who knows how far, or it could have come from a completely different direction. I mean, ultimately, I have no idea which direction it came from, but I suspect it had been through there more than once. It had never encountered any human activity since we were not always there. It's not like they know the difference between private and public property. So it just probably figured, there's signs of humans, but they're never here. So they probably abandoned, or they're just, whatever it thought. And I think it thought it was a safe space. And I think it was probably surprised to see us as we were it. It probably figured it was going to have that whole section of woods to itself. Like I said, there's berry trees on the property. There's plenty of trees that they could make a shelter with if that's what they wanted to do.
Right.
There's fish in both ponds, so
there's kind of an abundance of everything.
Right. Yeah, that area was perfect because it has everything you need. It has food, it has water, it has
Well, fruit tree. Kenny says orchards. That's a good question.
I don't know if there was an orchard in the area. I'm sure there is somewhere.
It's gotta be.
Not that I'm aware of. I know we went a couple times to a pumpkin patch that wasn't too far from there. But I don't know of any orchards offhand, but that whole area is all farmland, so I'm sure there's one somewhere.
Yeah.
Within a reasonable distance. And, there's no street lights or anything there either. It's very dark at night. And I think that's why it was traveling at night, because if your goal is to avoid people, that's the perfect time to do it. It's going to be pitch black. There's no street lights. All you have is moonlight and just, a little bit light from the stars to really see what's going on, until, unfortunately, as we found out, you get too close and then you realize, the world is a much more interesting place than you thought it was about 30 seconds ago.
Are there a lot of private ponds in the area?
Yes, I believe there are.
Okay.
Most of the properties, I believe, have some kind of pond or another, whether they be smaller or larger, but they all probably have at least 1 or 2 on them.
Which attract
some of them have massive ones.
Yeah, and ponds attract a lot of reptiles like frogs and snakes, which are very edible. And of course, there's fish, and they're usually pretty shallow.
Yeah, the ponds are 6 to 8 feet deep, maybe. So for them, that's not necessarily that deep. You know what I mean? They would be able to touch all the way around, and there always were a lot of frogs there. Saw a lot of salamanders, things like that. We'd see occasionally snakes here and there, a couple turtles over the years. And there was a ton of deer on the property and wild turkeys. There were wild turkeys everywhere. You used to find dozens of feathers on the trails when we would go. We'd be gone for a month, and then you get back and we'd cut the trails and stuff and clear everything and open it up. And there would just be wild turkey feathers all over the place. We had tons of them.
Wow.
So and I don't know if it would. I've read different things where some people say that they do in fact will attack a deer or, something along those lines.
That's generally the thinking. Yeah, that they eat deer, but they just go after the liver and so on, some of the soft tissue.
Yeah, that's very possible. And there's plenty of deer there, so there's there's small animals too. You have a lot of raccoons, groundhogs, chipmunks, squirrels, birds, probably, I'm sure, foxes, coyotes probably now in that area. So, there's definitely a lot of reason for it to be there. It is discreet. It is off, I don't want to say off the grid, but off the beaten path. And so is everything around it. So there's plenty of places to go if it needs to move quickly. And I personally think that to some degree they migrate around. I think that they do not exhaust any one area of a food source. I think they go for a day or two, maybe longer, but eventually I think they go for a short period of time. They, scatter, salvage whatever they're going to eat, or, kind of get a lay of the land, get some food together, eat, and then I think they move on to the next area and the next area, and then they just kind of go in a pattern. I think they see these areas where it's safe and they kind of migrate. I don't know what the pattern is, but I think if you had enough people come forward, you might be able to look at everything, overlay it on a map and say, wait a minute, if you look at these dates, it looks like they're going over here, over here, over here. Maybe there is some kind of pattern here.
Where's the nearest sighting that you could find, like from the BFRO or other databases? Did you find some in it?
Oh, yeah.
On a track? What did you
find?
Right
there. Literally right there, yeah. Right on the other side of the Ohio line, there were sightings on the BRF or the BFRO.
Okay.
Ashtabula had a bunch in that area at that time. And there was other sightings in that same county at that time.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania. So something was walking around those woods during that time in the late 90s. You know what I mean? And people reported them, but these are the ones that we know about. And that always goes back to what we were saying before, and you were saying 1 to 10%. I'm thinking, well, if you got 20, 30 sightings and 10% is what was reported, then there's probably more than one out there, for one thing. I just see one now. Somebody posted a comment about Geneva on the Lake State Park.
Yeah.
It's about
how far away?
35 minutes.
Close. Yep.
40 minutes from them. Now it just depends on traffic. You can make it a little bit faster. But I know I'm familiar with Geneva State Park. I've looked for them there.
Verax, we love you as a guest. You're awesome. We appreciate all this data and this info. This is awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate all your contributions here. They're looking up sightings. July 2011, Class A, a man described a dusk encounter near Geneva. How far is Geneva from this spot?
Geneva, that was Geneva State Park that they were talking about. In Geneva, it's right there. So it's about 35, 40 minutes from
so it's close.
Where their place is. Yeah. So it's very close. And like I said, that area has not been developed really until the last 5 or 10 years.
Wow.
I know the one sighting was like July 2011. That makes sense because was still probably very rural back then. It's still very rural now. It's just there's developments and things like that going up. So it's not like it was. It is starting to expand out. But I see another sighting from 2014 at Geneva on the Lake State Park, which makes sense because Geneva on the Lake State Park is on Lake Erie. And it's a big park. There's other private campgrounds in the area. Geneva's known for its wineries. There are tons of wineries in the area. I think there's 6 or 8 big ones. You can do bus tours of them. So there's massive fields where they're growing this stuff because they make the wine in-house. So there's definitely still a lot of rural space that is private property that most people would not have access to. It would not go. Generally, people don't go past the no trespassing sign, right? You know what I mean? So there's still plenty of places for them to hide out there and go completely unnoticed.
Now, Salvador has a question. Salvador Bruno. He asks did you hear any coyote sounds before and after your encounter? He said that frogs go silent before your Bigfoot paintball shoot. Did the frogs go silent? Do you remember any sounds? And
That's a good question. You know what? It never occurred to me until you brought that up, but I would have always assumed the frogs would have went silent because I was walking by. You know, a lot of times, my brother and I used to catch the frogs, and when you get closer, they would shut up so you didn't catch them. But now that you mention it, it never crossed my mind before, but it's very possible that they knew something else was there, and that's what they were. It wasn't me that they were, trying to avoid. They were trying to avoid being lunch for something else.
So you do remember it going quiet?
I don't remember any noises.
Okay.
And I was going to great lengths to not make any noise myself or make any disturbance because I thought I had PJ dead to rights. I was so excited. I had a big welt on my chest the size of a paintball where he came out of behind a tree and got me at almost point blank range earlier in the day. And I'm like, this is going to be sweet revenge. I'm going to put one in the back of his head and I'm going to laugh every minute of it. And that's all I was thinking about. You know what I mean? And I was just trying to be as quiet as I could so I could get as close as I could to get the best shot, as many shots in as I could so I could laugh and run away, you know?
It's funny.
Okay, so you're the founder of cryptidparanormal.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to kind of save that for later, which I'm now bringing it up. Do you feel that Bigfoot is just a flesh and blood creature, or are you in the other camp where you're undecided, or have you made your mind up one way or the other? You don't have to be shy.
Yeah. I'm in a biological camp.
Okay.
I believe what we saw was a biological creature.
Okay.
I've done a lot of research. I believe they're biological creatures. That said, I can't explain how they disappear. I do not have all the answers.
Right.
There's so much we don't know about them. I have different hypotheses I could speculate. You know, certain animals like owls can blend into a tree. You know, they change color. Different animals can do that. How they disappear, because a lot of times you'll see stories and they'll say, well, you know, there was and then the footprints just stopped and it vanished.
Well, let's just say this. Okay, so here's kind of where I stand. I'm open-minded to some paranormal explanations for some of the sightings, or even all of them, but there's nothing I've ever heard really that can't be explained by a flesh and blood animal. You know what I mean? Their tracks disappearing, that can be explained a million different ways. All sorts of things can always be explained with regular physical animal. So it's like, why jump to that when you don't need to? But yet I'm open-minded to it because I've seen enough weird crap to just humble the living hell out of me. You know, I'm just humble. I don't think I ever know anything. This whole world is so crazy, and there's just so many weird things out there that we don't know anything about. And I think jumping to conclusions is not good. We should all be open-minded, all of us.
Oh, absolutely. My view is this. I don't think the paranormal is magical. I don't think it's supernatural. I don't think the supernatural is supernatural, so to speak. I think it's a level of science.
Yes.
We do not yet understand.
Yes.
I think the answers are there. I think we're just now getting to a technological point where we can use technology to help us figure out what some of these answers are, or if nothing else, what are the right questions to ask? Are we even asking the right questions? You know, how do these creatures vanish the way they do? I have no idea. Do I think that they are spiritual? I can't say for certain. I have no idea. I've never physically touched one to see if it was solid. I know there's prints. I know what I saw. And I think it's biological, but just because I think it's biological doesn't mean I'm not wrong. And also, two things can be true. It can very well be biological in some way connected to, if you want to call it a spiritual realm, it has some way to access another dimension of somehow, whether it be through some kind of natural portal system that exists, and humanity either
I mean, let's put it this way. We don't know anything about anything, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be totally separate phenomena that aren't necessarily related. It could be physical and something paranormal, and they're not necessarily related. We don't.
And everything is just
absolutely,
normal. You know, I think that a lot more things are normal that we categorize as, you know, some mystical thing, and it's just it's
well. And how many animals have capabilities that are beyond our real comprehension? I mean, you mentioned earlier about dogs sensing cancer.
We don't know anything about anything.
I mean, biology can do some amazing things. Biology can explain a lot of what we might think is paranormal. I mean, biology can do a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah. You know, I mean, if you would have, you know, you drop a Tesla 200 years ago, they're going to think it's a magic chariot. You know,
absolutely.
They just simply don't have the knowledge.
You know? Exactly.
And that's a good example. I think that's where we're at with the paranormal. I don't think we have the knowledge yet to even necessarily ask the right questions, but I think we're getting to a point where technology will cover what we can't understand, because we can plug the information into something that can understand it. It can figure it out. It can give us direction to help us find the questions. And once we identify the right questions, then we can start looking for the right answer.
Did you see the comment? Brian and Jeff, look at the comment. If dogs had hands, they would rule the world.
Yeah, they could.
I love it. That's a very.
You know, I just thought of a cool analogy that it's kind of a good thought experiment related to what you just said, Brian. Imagine Da Vinci, one of the greatest minds in history. You give Da Vinci a Ferrari and the key to it, he would never, ever, ever figure out how those two things go together. He'd never figure out what a car is. He'd never figure out how the key works in it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's just kind of something to think about. Is we don't know. I mean, we just don't know a lot of stuff.
Well, the language for him to describe a car, the language wouldn't have even existed yet. You know, he wouldn't be able to describe it in terms that we would relate to today to even understand what he was talking about.
Yeah,
you know. And the other thing too is to think about, especially after having an encounter. You know, if you remember, if you guys ever watched the Men in Black movie, it's one of my favorite movies.
I love those.
But, you know, Agent J says to Agent K, you know, what yesterday you knew humans were alone on this planet. What will you know tomorrow? Because it just takes one moment to change your life. I always thought that was a great analogy because, you know, he saw an alien. Well, you see a Sasquatch and you know there's something out there. You can't prove it, but you had to, you know, 5 minutes before I saw that Sasquatch, I knew PJ and I were the only ones in those woods. There was no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, so what we know now could change in an instant. You know what I mean? I don't like to make assumptions on the biological versus the spiritual because I said my personal preference, I think it's biological. But a fact, detail, something could come out tomorrow, and then I'm going to say, no, it's spiritual, you know? Another piece of the puzzle might come out after that. I'm going to say, no, I was wrong, it's biological, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a right answer. I agree with what you said earlier, that we just don't know enough about these creatures to for sure rule anything out one way or the other.
Well, I really applaud you, Brian, because you seem like you got your feet really nice, firmly on the ground, and you're open-minded, which is great. I mean, you need both. You have to have your feet on the ground, but you got to be open-minded too.
Yeah. Because
there's so many things we don't know. We just don't know yet. It doesn't mean they're, you know, weird. Because what was weird 100 years ago isn't weird now, right?
Yeah.
If I would have brought a camcorder back in time 100 years ago, they would have thought that was pretty damn weird and, you know, probably mystical and God knows evil or who knows what. But now we don't think that way.
But, you know, another Tesla reference, look at cars 100 years ago. You had to crank over to start the engine, and now you can get in and tell it what to do, and it'll drive you there. You know, a lot changes very, very fast. And it just takes one breakthrough in information to open up a whole new level of knowledge that we didn't have before.
Right.
You reminded me of another really good line from Men in Black. Actually, and I think of this a lot. He says, "A person is smart, people are dumb. And that's really profound. A person that's sitting there thinking by himself is pretty smart. People in a group can be colossally stupid. And that applies to so much of what we talk about here. Just groupthink can really screw things up.
I agree completely, because I feel like people see something, they're sure of what they saw, and then they go tell they're out having a beer with their friends, and then all of a sudden it's, are you sure you saw? What if it was or this or that? And then they kind of they wear you, not necessarily intentionally, but they kind of gang up on you, and then you end up caving, and then you change your mind on what you actually saw. And
our brains are we're kind of wired for consensus seeking. Consensus is a huge motivator for human psychology. So yeah, that's a huge factor.
I was having an interesting conversation with a friend of mine, and she said, because she's very sensitive to a lot of supernatural things, but she grew up, she's from Puerto Rico, and she grew up and when she was a kid, they went to seances and things like that. So to her, this is reality. There is no question that this stuff exists. And I've often wondered, is it we're so ingrained from birth to, if you can't see it, if you can't touch it, it's not real. We'll tell you what's real. You go to school, they'll tell you this is real, this not. That's how it is. There is no gray. There is black and there's white. It's real, it's not. And I don't think that's how the world is. I think the world is very gray. I think clearly there's something out there. We can debate whether it's a Sasquatch or not, but I think we could mostly agree there's something people are seeing all over the world, all over the country for hundreds of years. Native American culture, First Nations people in Canada, we're all seeing something. So something is out there. But are we so trained in this age to shut everything off, and our brains are trained to look at that and say, no, that's not possible. That can't be. They can't exist. Where some people simply see it and accept it for what it is. And I think that's people like that probably have a better experience because their brain doesn't try to wash it or clean it or make it fit into a certain box. You know what I mean? I think it just says, this is what I saw. And that's what it was.
It's really difficult for most people to go against the grain too. If everybody in your community, everybody in your social circle is saying one thing, it's hard to stick to your guns and have a different opinion. It's just the way that is, so yeah.
What do you really think, Jeff?
Well,
I love it.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just
I know exactly what you're saying. I was well said.
Yeah. Thank you. Because I think I'm a pretty independent thinker, and I say a lot of things that people think that I'm goofy or nuts. My family often thinks that I'm a little bit nuts, but I think I'm probably neurodivergent enough that I just don't care. I'm going to say and think what I think is right, and if you disagree with me, if it makes me unpopular, I don't care. I wish more people were like that, but that's a powerful force. It's a really powerful force,
So what do you think these things are? What's your best guess? So let's put it that way. I don't want to put you in a corner, but if you were to kind of guess what they are, where they're heading, where they came from, just what are your best guesses? I like your opinions.
I suspect that there's a couple of possibilities. I go down every rabbit hole, even though I don't necessarily think the spiritual. I still go down that rabbit hole, and I will sit there and read books and research as if I do believe that, and I will try to look for evidence and put things together to support that theory. I still lean towards the biological. I just don't. I know it's something spiritual to me. Wouldn't leave footprints. They wouldn't need a nest. They wouldn't need to eat. Things that we believe that they do. I lately have been wondering if, I at one point in time there were roughly 20 or so, and it's debatable, different species of humans. Upwards of 40,000 years ago, even there was more than one species of human being still out there.
Yeah.
And according to science, as we know it today, we all inbred with each other, and either the species all kind of merged into what's now us, or Neanderthals killed them off.
Yeah.
Or a combination of both. But what if that's not what happened? What if one of them did survive and they've survived alongside us this entire time? If you look at reproductive rates of large primates, the larger the primate, the more time. They're older when they reproduce. They'll reproduce less frequently. sometimes 7-8 years in between reproducing. So they're only going to have 1 or 2 offspring. Whereas humans, I mean, you can turn on the TV and see somebody with 10 or 15 kids out there. I think that they're living in harmony more with nature. I think they're more balanced with the environment than we are and just the world around us. I think that if they are in fact some kind of primate, it makes sense that their reproductive rates would be much like other large primates, except for us, where it's a typically longer span between reproducing, and that would explain why their numbers are not nearly as massive as ours, because we override our instincts, right? And some people have 1 kid, some people have no kids, but then somebody has 5, 6, 8, 10 kids, whatever it is. And, there's just our numbers grow. We just populate at a much faster rate, but we choose to do that because we're not operating on a survival instinct. We're going to work. We make decisions that, I'm going to go to McDonald's. I know that I have food here. I know that I can go into my refrigerator. I can get food. I can go to a store within 5 minutes. I don't think about not eating that day. But if you're living like they do in the wild, your priorities would be much different, because they do have to think about, okay, well, what am I going to eat today? Right? They can't go to a store. There's nothing prepackaged for them. There's no fast food restaurant to go to. So they have a different level of priority and concerns than we do. And if you look at a lot of the Native American folklore, they often talk about how there used to be other tribes of humans, probably, in my opinion, Sasquatch, but it's an opinion, that humans lived in harmony with. And at some point, they separated themselves from us. And if you look at the legends in the oral history, it typically goes back to right about the time when the Europeans started coming over here and ripping down the forest and putting up towns. And because they wanted to live with the land, not make the land conform and the environment to live with them, And we have Amish communities, Mennonite communities, whatnot, that still live a different lifestyle today. So why do they live like that? I don't know. Is there a reason they haven't developed? Possibly. Is there a reason they haven't made themselves present to us? Probably. Would you? I mean, honestly, think about it. If you were a somewhat intelligent being whose population numbers were at best a fraction of ours and whose reproductive rate was nothing compared to ours, and you see the way we behave to each other, would you want to be the different species that's coexisting, or would you avoid us like the plague? If I was a Sasquatch, I would avoid us like the plague. And one of the other things I go back to is, if you're familiar with the cave drawings in Mount Shasta, there's out west, there's a lot of different oral history where the descriptions are passed down. There's old paintings, there's drawings, there's totem poles that depict a creature. And at some point, the Europeans came over and they looked at us and they say, oh, well, why do you have an ape up there? Because what we're told is that there are no primates in North America and haven't been for hundreds of thousands of years. So if that's the case, I have one question. How would a Native American tribe know what a primate looked like before the Europeans got here and showed them one? How would they know? And why is there a legend in Ohio, or an oral history in Ohio, and the same one from a tribe in California that are saying the exact same thing? How would they have connected 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, when this was all woods, incredibly harsh climate, who knows, countless predators? How would they all have these stories? How would they all paint these things? And then they go all the way up to Canada too. The First Nations people have the same stories. They talk about the same things. Now, you see differences in some of the tribes. Some will say that it's a spiritual being. It's a forest guardian. Some say that they were the ones who taught them how to live on the land, how to exist in the environment. And others say that they were a different species of human. They were just different people, and they would call them wild men or hairy men and things like that. So if that's the case, how does everyone come to the same conclusion? How do you get it? Like, take, for example, we'll say Mexico. tribes that live out that way, or I'm sorry, New Mexico, Arizona, down that way. How do they have the same description of a creature that someone in Vancouver has? How would they have ever gotten into contact? You know what I mean? How long would that take to go that far? You're talking walking across the entire continent. How would you even survive that? You know what I mean? I just don't see how they could have communicated at a level with such detail. Even if they had, allegedly, there's no primates here. So how, before the Europeans came, they should not have known what it would look like. But they made a good enough depiction where a European walked over to a totem pole and said, oh, there's a wolf, eagle. Oh, that's a gorilla, ape, something like that. Well, how did they do that? Right? They had to have seen something to make them think that. And that's one of the biggest things that's kept me in the fact that I think they're real. I think they're biological. I can see the spiritual side. Because, if you look at a population, the Native American population, if a Sasquatch is doing something, like, for example, say they have the ability to blend into a tree or blend into the forest in a different way, they can perhaps change their coloring. Other animals can do it. I'm not saying they do. I'm saying it's possible. But if that's the case, to them, that would look like magic, right? Today, we know that's genetics, that's DNA. Animals can do that. That's not something we would look at and say it's magic. But 500 years ago, they would absolutely say, oh, that must be a spirit guardian. It vanished to the woods, because they wouldn't have the knowledge, they wouldn't know it. Like I said before, they wouldn't have the right questions to even ask. DNA, they had no idea what DNA was, They didn't know about cells, genetic traits. They would think it's all magic to them. So I could see why some of them think it's spiritual or it's a spiritual guardian. I just disagree. I think it's a biological creature. I don't have the answers on how it moves the way it does. I think it's very possible there's underground cave systems that it accesses that we're not aware of. Especially around here, Ohio has a decent amount of cave systems. A lot of them aren't necessarily mapped. Kentucky has the largest cave in the world, and there are Sasquatch sightings, Bigfoot sightings there that go back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And according to ancient lore, the local Indian population said that was the entrance to the underworld where another race of people lived.
Yeah.
So, it's very possible that they have been able to survive alongside us this entire time and gone unnoticed. But as far as what I think they are, I think they're biological. I think our ancestors just didn't have the right questions to ask. They didn't know about DNA. They didn't know what we know. And, now that and that's going to be the biggest struggle. We have to get our hands on a sample of its DNA. I mean, that's really what we're missing, right? We need to get a sample of hair. We need to get a sample of blood. I'm not at all an advocate for ever hurting one of these creatures. I know some people think that, and I always hear people say, well, until there's a body. That's very true. I don't disagree. A body would definitely prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. However, I believe they're at least somewhat sentient creatures. I don't think they're like a bear. I don't think they're like a coyote, where they're not, what we would consider sentient or, not at the same level of us. I think that they are probably relatively intelligent. And I think to the point where they have certain inalienable rights and they should not be hunted down like animals, because I don't think they are animals. I would certainly love to get a sample from one, maybe shoot one with a tranq dart, but I would never want to see harm come to one of them.
I agree.
But unfortunately, that's what we're missing. And that's the key thing is the scientific community is going to continue to look at us and be like, you guys are all crazy. Prove it. We want DNA, and I think eventually we'll get there. And it's a puzzle. And what we're doing now, we're exchanging ideas. We're talking about this. We're putting together pieces of the puzzle. It's a very, very large puzzle, but every piece gets us one step closer. I think it's why it's important to talk about what we see and to interact with each other and ask each other questions and say, hey, did you ever think of this?
Yeah. Well, it all adds up. It's a lot of anecdotal evidence, but the huge body of anecdotal evidence is piled on top of all of us pretty deep and pretty heavy. The whole mystery will be solved at some point. I just hope it's soon, but maybe it'll be many lifetimes. But I do think it'll be solved at some point. So Yeah, I like your attitude for sure.
Absolutely. I like when
Brian,
you
you
think a
got it.
lot.
You got your feet
Thank
on the
you.
ground, and you're open-minded. I mean, that's all we can all be, right? Very open-minded, feet on the ground. We don't jump to conclusions, but I've seen some weird crap in my life, and that I can't explain, and I've heard certainly weird stuff, and so there's room for something way above all of us, when you have experiences that don't fit into a little mold, you just kind of tuck it aside, and you go, well, maybe we'll deal with that some other time. Do you think the mystery will get solved because of science soon? Because obviously it is getting better and better and cheaper. It's going to be a day you're going to be able to buy a DNA machine up at Walmart, right? It's coming. It's not really that complicated. They're actually, the DNA analyzers now are getting smaller and smaller, and now they're desktop size, where there's like DNA labs popping up all over, almost like a chain store. This thing is gonna at some point produce something. The problem is, if it comes back mostly human, it's like, oh, it's contaminated. What are you going to do? And I'm sure it is mostly human. It's got to be.
It looks enough like us where you would think that there would be some genetic markers that would be similar, but there are species out there that do look alike and actually have no genetic, and that's very possible too. We could be talking about something completely different than us altogether.
Yeah. No, I realize,
until we get.
In my opinion, I've submitted enough stuff, and it keeps coming back with the same results. Stuff I know is not human because of the physical attributes under a microscope are not human. They do not match human. And then you give it to a lab and they come back and it's like, well, this is like this human, it's got to be human. Yeah, but they're not getting the full sequence. So at some point, we're going to get the whole enchilada, and someone's going to get brilliant and figure out how we can differentiate it from it. I mean, look, we share 99% of our DNA with a chimp. We don't look like chimps.
No, not in the slightest.
Not even the slightest. And yet we have 99% of their DNA is our DNA. That's crazy. And so, there's going to be more levels to DNA soon that we're all going to have access to. They're working on subgroups and subgroups of the subgroups of DNA right now. And so it's, we're just getting the big picture. We're not getting the little, we see the letter A, but letter A is made up of millions of things. But all we keep seeing is letter A compared to letter A. But there's a lot more of the, you can drill down deeper into the DNA, and there's scientists working on that now. And so
we still get surprises too. They're still getting surprises. Just recently, we talked about it, the human DNA that's, I forget where on the planet it was found, but an extinct group of humans that has no relation to any other humans at all. Do you know the story I'm talking about? Either of you? Do you remember that story? I wish I could remember the details.
That sounds familiar. I can't remember.
Pretty recent. It's pretty recent, and it's relic. It's ancient human DNA, and it's a group that's not related to any living humans. It's another offshoot of humans that came. They don't know where it came from. They don't know where they went. They're humans, but they're different. Gosh, I'll have to find the story and so I can give you some more detail. But I just read that recently. Well, yeah, there's still surprises. We don't know it all.
Oh, sure. I mean, working on my hypothesis that they evolved from another offset of human, I came across some articles where apparently in parts of Europe, if you are non-African born, a lot of people carry between 1% and 4% of basically a leftover species of human that has since died out, because that's that's where they bred with us kind of thing comes from, and that's the current form. But if we're carrying around that much of a percentage. What if something else did survive and it has a percentage of our DNA? And that's why it looks similar to us, but it's also very different. Maybe it only has 5% of our DNA. But as you mentioned, Doug, chimpanzees are a 99% match, and look how different we are.
Yeah.
So that a couple, a percent of DNA can do quite amazing things. I think with drone technology, we can now get places we couldn't get before. I think there are trail cameras. I think there are digital cameras that can pick up spectrums of light that we are not able to see. If you ever read about the human eye, we actually have quite terrible vision. We barely see anything that's around us.
Yeah.
And, I've always, back to they disappear. Do they disappear, or are they able to perhaps change into some shade that is difficult for us to see, or maybe impossible for us to see because our eyes simply can't perceive it? I don't know. I realize that sounds a little bit out there, but there's we said 1% of DNA could be a world apart. So who knows what instincts or survival
exactly.
trait evolution forced into these things.
Even 100% DNA difference can be huge, but it just makes it very difficult for us to differentiate human DNA from these things. I know for a fact I've given labs stuff that came from a Bigfoot. I mean, it just the morphology does not match human at all, and you give it to him and it comes back human. Like, okay, that's what I expected you would say. I
just found the article. This came out just a few days ago. It's in Colombia, and it's a previously unknown lineage of early humans. That they found remains that they're not related. They say about 6,000 years ago, and they have a genetic profile not seen before or since in any ancient or modern population in the Americas.
And what is this, Jeff? You lost me.
I was talking about the unknown human DNA. It's it was found in Colombia, and it's an unknown lineage of early humans.
I know, but when was it found? Give me a little more information.
The genetic material is about 6,000 years old.
Okay,
and this was found recently in the last few weeks.
And so it's coming back non-human?
No, it's human, but it's like an ethnic group that's not related to any other known ethnic group.
I see. So it's like a new subcategory.
Yeah, it's like a new ethnic group, or what's the word? Is haplotype the right word? I can't remember. But it's genetic. It's humans with it's a genetic group that's not related to any other human population, and we didn't know about it. They just discovered this in the highlands of Colombia, and they were around 6,000 years ago and disappeared about 4,000 years ago. No idea where they came from. No idea where they went.
Huh.
Does that answer your question?
Are they saying it's a Homo sapien, or are they saying?
Oh yes. Oh, it's human. It's a human. It's just an unknown ethnic group.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying, there's Neanderthal humans and there's different kinds of humans. Are they saying it's a Homo sapien like us, or are they saying it's another primate species?
It's Homo sapiens sapiens. I mean, it's modern humans just with a different ethnic group that's unknown.
6,000 years in the grand scheme of things isn't that long ago.
No, not at all. So who knows? Anyways, sorry, I got off track there a little bit.
All right, let's get into a little bit of a new area. But no, it's been interesting because bottom line is none of us know anything. Although I'm sitting on enough samples, I'm still looking for more labs for Legimeet Science. We're still not ready to release it. But we've got lots more really good samples to get to labs here soon this summer. And we're hoping to get some really amazing results. Super amazing. So let's see here. What do we got? I'm just looking at any questions. So where should we take this conversation there, Brian? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? It's up to you.
I mean, wherever you guys want, we can branch off into the paranormal.
All right.
Talk about other cryptids. It doesn't. I can go either. I can talk about this stuff all night.
You love it. All right. I want to look at your bio again. So you're the founder of Cryptid Paranormal, right?
Yes.
How would you describe how would you describe the word paranormal? Define it in your terms. What does it mean to you?
I guess I would say it's not what mainstream cultural and scientific understanding would consider normal. It's an oddity. It's something that doesn't have a place defined for it. You know, to me, cryptids are paranormal. Everything falls under paranormal because it's not. Well, it's not normal. You know what I mean?
Right. It doesn't mean
we consider normal.
It's a ghost. It just means we don't understand it at all.
Yeah. It just means, we don't have an answer for it. I mean, gorillas were considered cryptids until 1847, I think it was.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, so what's a cryptid today in 25, 50 years may not be, you know, and the same thing with anything else paranormal. You know, do we know what ghosts are? No, we have no idea.
Right.
Are there a lot of sightings? Yes. Is there evidence? You know, we have people have millimeters, the temperature changes in the room. Sometimes there are smells that are related to a specific person. You hear sounds.
Right.
You know, there are certain traits that emulate in these situations. And, well, you know, one of the things they say in science, well, you have to be able to repeat it. Okay, well, if one ghost is doing it over here, another one's doing it over here, even though they're not together, there's still a pattern. They're doing the same things. They're impacting our world somehow.
Yeah.
Now the question is, what are they? I have no idea. Are they the leftover consciousness or soul? Perhaps.
Well, I think what you're getting. Well, somebody try to define what you're getting at, though. So I don't want people to think you're contradicting yourself. To me, 300 years ago, our transistor radio would be paranormal.
Yes.
It's obviously not paranormal. It's just something that somebody invented and it works, and we can't see the radio waves, and so radio waves are paranormal, but yet they're not. You're kind of thinking along those lines when you say this, because it's just more like you're saying we don't understand it, so therefore I just put it in that category because that's all we have for words, right?
Right. It's a catch-all.
It's a catch-all.
We've come
Correct.
Linguistically and culturally far enough to understand that we can't define everything. So we have the term paranormal, and everything that doesn't fit anywhere else fits.
Well, like Stone Picker's got a good point. We're all paranormal. We don't know how we operate. You know what I mean? It's the human brain. It's like, what the hell? Such an amazing computer that runs on cornflakes. You know, we eat cornflakes and we can invent stuff. It's crazy. So we're all amazing things, and I think that's what he was getting at.
Yeah, there's, like I said earlier, I do not believe in magic. I believe the supernatural exists, but not as like a spiritual entity or a ghost, in the sense that it's some kind of magic. It's not real. I think there's a scientific explanation for it. I think paranormal is a word that we use to explain these things, as far as categorize it, because we have to put everything. We're labelers as a species. Everything has to have a place.
Yeah, that's a really good, well said. That was really well said, by the way, and something that needed to be said. Good job.
But yeah, I think it's the catch-all. But I think if you break it down and start focusing on the subsects of it, the different branches, so to speak, you have cryptids here, you've got ghosts here, spirits here, poltergeists, UFOs, whatever is out there that falls under this category. But that doesn't mean that they're magical beings. For example, there's UFO sightings all the time. 100 years ago, we would probably have thought that was magic, but we know better now because we know people can fly. We have the ability to airplanes. We know the U.S. government has military technology that we're probably not aware of yet. We know planes can break the sound barrier. These are all things that we know right now. So what are we going to know in 100 years? You know what I mean? And I think that's the explanation. What are ghosts? I have no idea. What I think they are is perhaps the residual energy of a human consciousness, right? Our brain waves essentially are energy, right? They're you can measure brain waves. Energy, as we understand it, can't be destroyed. So it has to go somewhere. When our brains cease to exist, it ceases to capture that energy and it goes somewhere else, is my opinion. And I don't know where it goes. I don't know what happens to it. I suspect that's when we see ghosts that are family members, or you see a ghost, or you get a feeling, or, sometimes people say, I just knew that, my loved one was trying to tell me something. Maybe they were, I don't know, but I think one day we're going to have an explanation and it's not going to be considered paranormal. We're going to say, oh, this is a state of when the human body ceases to function, our brainwave patterns perform the following. This transition happens. I think they'll have labels for it. I think they'll have terms. Until we get to that level of understanding, it's just all going to be lumped into the paranormal, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having mysteries. Life would be pretty boring if we didn't have mysteries, right? So I think that's, to me, it's all science. I don't know, why do some people reappear versus others? I have no idea. Is crossing over, as some people say, and you hear psychic mediums say, I can help a spirit cross over. Maybe that is a real thing. I have no idea. Maybe there is another dimension that you can go to. And perhaps when we see a ghost, so to speak, we're seeing an image of someone who's trapped, between the worlds for some reason. There's some reason they're anchored here. Now, is it unfinished business? I doubt it. I would imagine that there's probably some kind of scientific explanation to explain why one being would cross over, if that's in fact what's happening, as opposed to another. I don't know what that answer is, but I see the Central Kentucky Bigfoot there was talking about life after death, when the body dies. I think is what he's getting at is, so when humans die, you lose a little bit of weight. It's not very much. And a lot of times people say, well, that's the soul leaving the body. And perhaps that's exactly what it is. Whether you want to call it brainwaves, consciousness, soul, I think it's all the same thing. What happens to it, I don't know. I think that's part of what we're all here. Years ago at Columbus State, I had an encounter with a ghost. I didn't know it was a ghost at the time. I found out after the fact, and for the longest time, I knew what I had seen, but I wasn't completely a believer myself until I started finding out that there were a bunch of other stories out there. I was going to class, saw a very attractive woman in an old red dress. I'm walking up the steps. She was going up. I get to the top floor, and she's walking down the hallway. And as I walked past my class, and I was usually on the borderline of being late, I glanced in to see if anything was going on yet, because I wanted to go talk to this lady. You know what I mean? She was very attractive. And I looked away for a minute, and she was gone. I was like, well, clearly she went into a classroom. Maybe there's some kind of weird Renaissance club or something like that going on down here. Or up here, I should say, because it was on the top floor of the hall. And I walked down and I looked in every room, and there was nobody in there. And a guy was coming from the other side of the steps, the other hallway, and he came up and he asked where the lady in the red dress went. And I said, that's a great question. I was just looking for her. I thought she went. Last time I saw her, she was heading your way. And he said, no, I saw her heading your way. I'm like, okay, maybe she turned around when she got, but I looked in all the classrooms. I don't see anybody else up here except for, my math class down the hall. And he's like, I don't know. Neither one of us could figure it out. And at the time, I was just like, I put it as a strange coincidence. And then it was just kind of one of those weird things that happens. About 6 months later, I got a job for the school as a student ambassador. And I was getting the training at the admissions office to give tours of the campus, we get to Aquinas Hall, and they said the first thing you should tell people about this hall is that it's haunted. There's a lady in a red dress that appears to people sometimes. She's there 1 second and gone the next. And one of my coworkers at the time said that her dad was in town visiting her, and he was sitting on the bench in front of that hallway, in front of that hall. And he said she walked up to him and he was talking. She said, Dad, who are you talking to? And he said, the pretty lady. And she said, there's nobody there. And he said, yeah, there was. He looked over and she was gone. And she said, he seemed surprised. He said, she was just here a second ago. She said, I didn't see anybody. He said, she was really pretty and she has this real old style dress on. And over my time there, I talked to dozens of other people who had seen her in the window. Some of the campus police officers were a little bit weary of the building. And as I dug into it more, there allegedly was a graveyard, at least partly on that campus at some point, and got moved. So I don't know if that's a coincidence. I don't know if it's, I don't know if disturbing a grave really triggers a spirit to walk among us, or if there's something else. I don't know if she's trapped for some reason. I'm not sure what it is, but she's been around for years. There was an article 2016, maybe 18 in the Columbus Dispatch about it, where they talked about when the cemetery was moved and the campus being haunted and things like that. And, I've read mixed reviews about there being a cemetery there. I have mixed reviews if a cemetery even has an impact. I'm not necessarily sure that it does. I think once we shed our body, if that's what's happening, then, who cares? That's how I would look at it. You know what I mean? If my body's essentially dead and I don't need it anymore, I don't care. By all means, disturb it all you want. It wouldn't bother me a bit, but that's just me.
What's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you personally, Brian? Not a story.
The weirdest thing happened to me was last August.
Okay, let's hear it.
I always mispronounce this island in Parkersburg, West Virginia, Blessenhurst Island. The Hidden Marietta Touring Company out of Marietta, Ohio. They're a paranormal group that hosts tours there twice a year. They do overnights. And I went last August. And the whole island is covered in bodies, basically. They found there's no construction. There's an old mansion that's on there that has been haunted for hundreds of years. And the Park Service, when they made it a state park, originally was going to build, but every time they started digging up, they kept finding more bodies. As it turned out, the local Native American population had lived on that island. And there had been many wars fought there. There was the park ranger that was there told me they found a skull with a tomahawk just cracked in its head and things like that. So that's why they didn't build on the island. They just turned it in. They kept it as a state park and they didn't build anything else. And then they're not even a campground there. It's just that they have a relationship with the touring company in the park, have a relationship where they can do that twice a year, but otherwise you can't stay there. Interestingly enough, the workers refuse to stay on the island after the sun goes down. And it's only accessible by boat. You have to take a ferry back and forth. But they refuse to stay there because they've all seen strange things in the woods. They've seen shadow creatures. Some of them have seen ghosts. They've had frightening encounters, things of that nature. And the house is supposedly haunted. People have seen various ghosts there. I can't remember which vice president it was, but he had lived there at one point or was staying there, and he was going to plan a coup to kick the other guy out. And it ended up getting foiled, but, there was blood, of course, shed, and a lot of people were killed on that island over the last hundreds of years. So there's definitely the grounds that you would expect if you're going to see an active place, restless spirits or something like that. I was in this house. It was midnight, 1 a.m., somewhere in that neck of the woods. I was by myself. And I originally was upstairs. And I had my millimeter and a recorder, a couple things like that, nothing crazy. And I had a thing where I could measure the sound. It would measure decibels. Us talking, it would say, conversation, human. It would tell me what I should be able to hear and what I couldn't. Well, I'm standing there, and I started to get this gut-wrenching feeling that I was in some kind of personal danger. My fight or flight response was kicking in, and I had this knot in my stomach, and I felt like I was being watched. I wasn't alone. There was no one in there.
Were you alone, or were you with friends?
No, I was alone. I went solo.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of anything.
Okay.
And I stayed anyways.
I wish I was you.
I can't help myself. My curiosity is probably going to get me killed one day, that's perfectly fine. At least I'll know before I go out. But I stayed for quite some time, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually I did go downstairs, and as soon as I walked out the door, I went away. And that's never happened to me before. There has to be an explanation. My mind's playing tricks on me. I walked around the house to see if there was somebody that maybe outside that could have been watching through one of the windows, or somebody was screwing with me. Didn't see anybody, couldn't hear anybody. So I said, okay, I don't back down. So I went back inside, walked around for a few minutes, and I went into the study, and the study adjoins a bedroom. And I looked to my right, and I saw what I used to think was complete myth, was a shadow being. Mm-hmm. It had a human figure, but it was like, I don't think darkness is the proper word for it. It was so dark and black when you looked into it, almost like it was drinking your sight. You know what I mean? You ever see one of those things where they spiral on an etch-a-sketch? For those of us old enough to remember those, where you stare at it and then it goes deeper in the tunnel. That's kind of what it was like, but it was just pure black. But it was so dark, even though there were no lights on, it stood out. The other thing that alone was enough to be like, what the heck is going on? But the device I was using to measure the sound.
My mic was muted. Can you describe how close you were to that thing? I don't want to move on yet. Let's dwell on what you saw a little longer. Was it close to you, or was it far away?
It was far away, because you couldn't go all the way
how far?
into each room.
Throw that into feet.
I'd say I have to think about the room size.
I mean, you're not
15, 30.
So I mean, it's within
20,
reason.
30 feet. Yeah.
All right. 20,
I mean, I was on one end, and I could see through the doorway into an adjoining room.
But
from
you
the
see
front
this
of the house into the back of the house.
Okay. I never get to talk to anybody that sees a shadow person, so that's why I'm curious. It's just my curiosity. Did the thing move? Was it moving, or was it still?
I think it was watching me.
Okay, but so it was fairly still then.
No, it moved. That's how I knew.
Move.
That's what led me. So it came across, and then almost like it laid down on the bed, but it went flat. It almost looked like it was slithering down and then up the wall and into the corner, and it just kind of faded away into the darkness. And I had been in the dining room, which also looks into that room, and then I wanted another angle. I'm not really sure why I wanted the other angle, but I just felt like I wanted another angle, and I walked over there, and that's when I saw it. And I can't help but think, was it somewhere else in that bedroom when I was in that dining room watching?
I want to back the truck up more here. Sorry, I'll drive you nuts. Sorry.
No worries at all.
So it's blacker than black, right? It's really like light absorbing black, correct?
I don't know. I don't think black does it justice, or darkness does it justice. It's so dark.
It's blacker than black.
Another word.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the darkest color I've ever seen.
Okay, but is it the shape of a person? Is it the shape of just a blob? Is it?
It was the shape of a person.
Okay.
I could see that it had legs. I could see that it had arms. I could see that it had a neck. I couldn't really get a good look at its face. It looked like there was some characteristics, but it was unclear.
But it's more of a human shape. Did you see a hat on it or anything like that?
It wasn't a hat, man. There was no hat.
Okay, no hat.
There was just a regular shadow being.
Okay, but you could tell it was like it's somewhat of a human shape, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And that's the thing that got me, is because it looked like it was standing in the door for a minute, but it was just so tall I couldn't see its head.
Okay.
And then it looked like when it walked over to the bed, almost like it laid down, but then it kind of went flat, and then it just grazed over the bed and back up into a corner. And as it walked into the corner, it just kind of faded away.
See, I just would have ran right there. I just would have ran.
I'd been terrified.
I would have just ran. You didn't run.
See, well, that's because I had that encounter with a Sasquatch. So I was my fear was gone at this. So I told you if I could do it again, I'd be running right at it. So I wasn't leaving.
Well, first off, you're alone, which I think is like, okay, whatever. I would never do that.
I always go alone. I don't care.
And you're seeing this thing, and you're still there. And this isn't it's this house.
It's an old mansion.
An old mansion. Oh, perfect.
It's an island in Parkersburg.
Oh, just perfect. Just perfect there, Brian. An old mansion. You're seeing this black blob thing doing whatever, like a human shape. How in the world did you stay there and not run?
I can't help it. I'm too curious. I have to know. I want answers.
Okay.
And there's two possibilities. Okay, so if it was some kind of supernatural entity and it wanted to do something to me, it certainly had its chance, right? And even if I ran, if it wanted to catch me, it probably could have. I have no idea what this thing could have been capable of. That, and other people have seen them on the island for many, many years. I just thought they were crazy. I didn't think that. I never put a lot of stock in shadow people, which is a bad thing for an investigator to do. You should always keep an open mind. I just always thought it was a little ridiculous until I saw one myself, because I've read a lot of articles published by the Cleveland Clinic about sleep paralysis, and they explain how the brain creates these, but I promise you, I was wide awake.
Okay.
I had slept in during the day. I was prepared to be up all night. I had a couple monsters with me. I mean, I was going strong. And this thing, whatever it was big. It didn't seem like it was any rush. It seemed like I suspect it was watching me more than I was watching it. And the thing on my phone that I was using to measure sound was going off the chart. And that's what I couldn't figure out, because someone should have been screaming in my face with it going with that. And I had tested it before, and I would just say some words and I could see the thing spike up and down. So it was working, but for some reason I couldn't hear anything, but someone should have been screaming at me. And I didn't pick up anything on my millimeter. I didn't feel a drop in temperature. I'm usually pretty sensitive to that because I like to I could live in the Arctic. I prefer it very cold. So as it starts to get cold, I usually can tell. And I didn't have that experience where some people say the temperature changed. That's not what happened to me. But maybe it's because I was further away than some people have been. Some people say that they see them right, 3-4 feet away from them. And that was not the case here. I saw it at a much larger distance. So perhaps that's why. Maybe it was colder, closer to the area. I don't know. Okay, well, continue. I wrestled around with that one for a long time. And because I really was not, I just didn't think it had merit. Like, well, the sleep paralysis makes sense. I've woken up before in a twilight and you think you see something and it's not really there. And, that kind of thing. I'm like, okay, so I could see why people would get confused. I've never had sleep paralysis. Hopefully I never will. I would imagine it's a terrifying experience. I could see how your mind would play tricks on me. And then I saw this thing. I'm like, well, that's out the door. Sleep paralysis is gone because I know I'm not sleepwalking. I'm not crazy. And, the first thing I did after I saw it is I went outside and walked around the house. I had to know, was there any kind of light source that I missed the first couple times around the house that could possibly have created some kind of shadow? And, it was late at night. It was dark. Is there some explanation? I came up with nothing. So then I went and I started talking to the other groups, trying to get an idea of where people were. And then, there was a couple barns quite a ways away. There was an old cabin where the original the last living Indian chief had lived in on the island that people were at too, which was also quite far away. And people were back by where the bathrooms were in the middle of the island, which was probably a decent walk, you know what I mean? 7-8 minute walk away, and there's a bonfire there, but that light wasn't going to project to the back of the house because the bonfire would have been, a 7 or 8 minute walk and then to the front and diagonal of the house. What I saw was in the back room of the house. So there's no way it could have been from that. And most people, when I got back, were already back. And I just kind of said, did anybody see anything? Anybody happen to be around the house, last hour or two? And everybody's like, no, we were there at this time. No, we're going to go back. A lot of people are going back between 3 and 4 because it's the witching hour and they thought they'd have a better chance. And as far as I could ascertain, no one was near me. It was just me. And I couldn't wrap my head around it at first because I've always been very critical of those creatures until I saw one. And then I started looking into other people that have seen it. And I started reaching out to people and I started to realize there are patterns here. It is a lot at night. People often describe them the same way. I talked to a guy and he was a little gun shy, so to speak. And I said, well, I'll tell you exactly what I saw. I prefer when people tell me things. I don't like to tell them I saw a shadow. I want them to tell me that they think it's a shadow creature. I want them to tell me what they think it is. I don't like to put words.
Yeah.
The gentleman, I met him on Facebook, so he wasn't, I was like, well, this is kind of what it looked like. It was very dark. And he said to me, when I saw it, he saw it in his bedroom and he said it was so dark. It was the darkest thing I've ever seen. And that's what scared me. And as soon as he said it's the darkest thing I've ever seen, I said, okay, I would give this guy some credibility. He probably saw something because anytime anyone I've ever talked to, as soon as you say you can't put it into words how dense the darkness of this thing is, people try to describe it and you can't. But you can tell that they understand what you're talking about, if that makes sense. And I've read a lot of different things. Most people experience what I experienced, which is your fight or flight instinct kicks in. You feel some kind of unease. You feel like you're in danger somehow. You feel threatened by these things. That's what most people feel. I've talked to a lot of people that say the opposite, that they are just simply a part of nature and they just exist and they don't bother anybody as long as you don't bother them. I was like, well, how would you bother one? I'm not actually sure what I even saw.
Take a look at the comment, Brian.
Yeah.
It says,
that's
like
a good description.
Cutout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good description.
Have either of you ever seen, what Vanta Black is?
I do, yeah.
Have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
Have you seen it in person?
I have at SEMA.
It's
in Vegas.
Deeply unnerving. And I know it's a physical object. I know it's nothing weird about it. Just seeing an object in that color, it reflects no light. It looks like there's a hole in the universe. It's unnerving.
So is that what your thing looked like? Vanta Black, Brian?
I like the cutout description. That's a good way to put it because it was
like a hole in reality.
It was darkness overlaid on darkness, but it was so much darker, almost like it was standing out because it was noticeably darker than the lack of light in the room.
Yeah,
which I didn't even know that was possible until I saw it myself.
Yeah. It's unnerving. It doesn't reflect any light.
Well, where's this story going, Brian? Damn it!
It's going. I saw you asked what the weirdest thing that's happened. That's the weirdest thing that's happened.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, I can't explain it. I saw it.
Well, I thought maybe there was the thing grabbed you by the neck or something.
The Sasquatch is biological. I was able to reconcile that. I've spent the last year almost now racking my brain together, talking to people. I can't figure out what this thing is, and it just drives me crazy. I have to have more information. So I've been obsessing over it.
It's fascinating because there's a lot of people that have seen been described a similar thing. I haven't seen any shadow people, thank God.
It would creep me out, man.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy. It really is creepy. I don't know
That
why.
would freak me out.
Something about it.
It makes the hair on the back of your neck
Yeah.
stand up. I mean, I don't know.
Is that the weirdest thing you've seen in modern times?
That's the weirdest thing I've seen. I can get behind a ghost.
Well, what did you do? Did you just leave then?
After I did laps around the house to try to figure everything, I slowly did kind of like a wormhole, if you will, outward, just looking for people to see if anyone was close by. And the group that hosts the event are fantastic. And I talked to them and they said, yeah, over the years, we have had encounters with those things all over the island.
Really?
And that's why the workers won't come back, is because they saw them in the woods. One of the crew saw them and it scared them so much that that was it. They left and never came back. So whatever's on that island is scaring the heck out of people. There's something clearly there. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they are some kind of supernatural being, for lack of a better term. Again, I don't think it's magic. I think it's science. I think we don't have an explanation. I've heard a lot of people say that they are bleeding over from another dimension kind of thing. You know how they say that everything in life happens at the exact same moment. It's just happening in different, the moment you're born and the moment you die happens all in 1 second. It's just how we experience it. You were perceiving it in a certain way. And I've heard people say that sometimes events or people can bleed over into someone else's perception. And I don't know, that could very well be true. I have no explanation for it. A ghost, I can get behind facts. There's a graveyard. There's other witnesses. There's patterns here. The same thing with a Bigfoot. There's footprints. There's people found hair. We think they make forts. We think they're biological. Hey, I'm on board. But these things, I cannot explain it. I don't have any answers. And that's what drives me a little crazy. And that's what freaked me out about it the most, is because we know less about those than really anything else out there. There's all sorts of stories, but if you look at shadow means, if you start digging into it, I found references dating back to Mesopotamia. The Sumerians had stories of shadow creatures. The Babylonians had stories of shadow creatures. Ancient Egyptians had story of shadow creatures. And again, you're talking about cultures all over the world. The Native American population had story of shadow creatures. So how are they all coming up with the same thing? What are they all seeing? There shouldn't be any way for them to communicate, is what we're told. And I'm assuming that's true. I don't see how they would. I don't think that any of those.
I wonder if anybody's ever said that a shadow person talked to them or tried to communicate. I've never heard an account that I can remember, at least.
At least through social media, I've connected with people. Some people say that they have perhaps some, I guess, so telepathic would be the best thing. I guess to me, it goes back to the psychological factor. You're seeing something that's completely out of our ability to understand. I think our minds inherently try to protect us. It wants to quantify it. It wants to explain it. It wants to give it reason. And by hearing something or talking to you or telepathically communicating to you, whether that's a psychological side effect or if they are in fact able to communicate, I don't know. I just think you can't rule out the possibility that sometimes it's just our minds trying to explain what we're seeing, and by giving it a human feature like speech. Because my question is, well, if it talks to people, how does it speak every language? How does it speak Spanish? How does it speak English? How does it speak French? You know what I'm saying? I don't understand how these things would know language, So that's the one thing that I say. I'm not saying that people are not receiving. They very well could be. I'm just saying there are reports of things like that all over the world. But if that's the case, how do they learn language? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a reason. I don't know. It's just a question. I just don't understand.
So that was the weirdest thing you've ever seen.
That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I can't wait to get back to that island. But That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I mean, this time I'm going to bring more camera than you've ever seen me carry.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever seen, Jeff? It was like what? An empty Coke bottle or a hamburger bun in the trash?
Nothing that weird. I mean, I've seen.
Jeff, you haven't seen anything.
I mean, I've seen lights in the sky. I've been an aviation enthusiast for a long time, so I know aircraft pretty well. I've seen lights in the sky that were very unusual, but that's about it.
Okay.
I'd like to see more stuff, and I've been around a lot. I've been around the world a lot. I've been in the woods a lot,
Jeff's a paranormal virgin.
I am.
Is that okay?
That's all right.
You know, and I hate to be the guy, but we're creeping up on 3 hours here. I could keep going all night, but and I will say this:
Stonepicker has the name Vanta Claus. I love it.
Yeah,
Vanta Black. Yep.
I will say as a compliment to Brian, when we get this long, the viewership normally drops off a lot, and it's not. So people are really, our fans are really enjoying having you here.
It's been wonderful.
Absolutely.
Brian,
I love how you think, man. I really do. I just think you have a good brain.
You have your feet on the ground. I like that. You get your feet on the ground. Plus, you're not scared of anything. That's not me. Holy crap.
I can handle a lot. Shadow people
You're telling me your story, and I suddenly got to pee like some little puppy. I got to pee because I'm scared.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyhow, so let's wind up. We'll get you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, if you're willing to come back.
Oh, yeah. Anytime. Let me know whenever. I'll be back.
Yeah,
I'd love to talk to you again.
Back.
Absolutely.
What do we got? Let's do our little wisdom of the week, which makes no sense to me, but go ahead and play it.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Thinking is easy, acting is difficult, and to put one's thoughts into action is the most difficult thing in life to overcome. And remember always, none of us are too important to not be nice to each other. Good night, everyone, from the Untold Radio Network.
Boy, that's true. That's a good one, Doug. I like that one.
Yeah.
Very true.
I had a really weird day today. It's like the last, I don't know, it's like 2 hours before we came on the air. It's like my whole brain went blank. I've never had that happen in my life. And I go, am I having a stroke? What the hell? I just had this really weird day today. Just weird.
Yes, yesterday was like that for me. Yesterday.
I had like everything looked unfamiliar to me. It was just a weird day. Like I went through a different timeline today. Anyhow, must be, maybe I just need more sleep. I think so.
You're back now. I can tell you're back now.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah. But it was great having you on.
Absolutely.
Brian,
Thank
we
you so
really appreciate it. We appreciate everybody in chat. You guys are wonderful.
The best.
We love y'all. And we'll be back next week. We've got Steve Bergon from Comedy Central. God, I can't wait to see. I'm having these like brain farts. Drunk. What's the show that he does?
Oh, Drunk History.
Drunk History.
Yeah.
So he'll be our guest next week. But
That'll be a fun one.
We'll be talking Bigfoot and the paranormal and all sorts of. I'm sure it'll be a great conversation. So that's next week. You're not going to want to miss that show. But thank you so much again, Brian. Be fun to talk off camera sometime. I'll get you my phone number and give me a call anytime you want. So good night, everybody. We love y'all. We'll be here next week, same time, same channel. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
I call you up in the middle of the night. Been bothered by dreams, ain't feeling alright. You give me comfort, say just give it some time. By the end of our talk, I'm feeling just fine.